And welcome to our council meeting, Thursday the 26th of May. If I could please ask everyone to stand for our opening karakia. Te taua mai runga, te taua mai raro, te taua mai roto, te taua mai waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa. Hone huie tahi e. And just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page. We've got a full house today, that's great, so no apologies. Are there any conflicts of interest? No, great. We do have speakers in our public forum today from the Unison Networks Limited. So I'd like to welcome Jason, Kagan and Isabel to the front to present to us, please. A very warm welcome to all of you.
Right, thank you, Mayor Kirsten. Good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public. I'm Jason Larkin, General Manager, Customer, Commercial and Regulatory at Unison Networks, and I'll let Gagan introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gagan Jada. I'm the General Manager for Networks and Operations at Unison Networks Limited.
So, yeah, look, we're really pleased to be able to come and speak to you today about our plans for the next 10 years, in particular how they relate to Hawke's Bay, and with a particular focus on Napier today. We're also just going to do just a general sort of run through of where Unison, or who Unison is, and where we sort of fit into the energy sector. So if we can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, that was us. Yeah. So just to recap, we've got just under 120,000 connections across 3 regions, and more than half of those are in Hawke's Bay. We're owned by the Hawke's Bay Power Consumer Trust, so anybody who pays a power bill in Hawke's Bay. Again, just to recap, where does Unison fit in? So we're an electricity distributor. So we take the power from the national grid that's been supplied from remote generation, including, for example, Waikato Moana, and deliver that through the local lines on behalf of retailers who then obviously charge the full cost of that delivered energy, including our transmission and distribution charges. Our vision at Unison is to enable our community's sustainable energy future. Won't go into that in too much detail, but that really is what drives and motivates us. And here's just a reminder of Unison in the community. Yeah, we really do have a focus on youth, including empowering and developing youth, but also ensuring that young people understand safety around electricity, and at the same time also very much focused on energy in our consumers' lives, and we know for some of our consumers that's quite challenging, and so we're involved in programs like Energy Mate, a sort of wraparound energy coaching service to help those whānau that are struggling with energy hardship. And it's really a focus for us to be connected with our customers and our communities, to listen, and we have a sort of virtuous circle that ensures we take what we hear, those insights, and turn them into actions, and those are reflected in our plans. And here's some examples of engagement that we're doing and really focusing on, and there's a few familiar faces around this table in that slide if you look closely. I think at least 3. But yeah, it's an example of key customers and stakeholders. I'll hand over to Gagan.
Thank you, Jason. So staying true to our vision of enabling a sustainable energy future, there are 2 key themes that I'd like to touch on when we talk about a long-term plan. And the first one is, how do we actually build and maintain a resilient network in the changing climate? And secondly, how we enable growth and decarbonisation aspirations for our customers and communities. In regards to resilience, we're building for resilience. You know, we follow the 4R philosophy that most of the infrastructures do around reduction, readiness, response, and recovery. And all our decisions that we make are backed by data. So we're always looking at optimizing the security of supply of the network with sustainability and energy equity. And an example of that is after the cyclone, what we've seen at Awatoto and the flooding, the concept that we're building there now, we've gone to the drawing board and we are building a modular transportable substation switch room that is cheaper, that is using sustainable materials, but at the same time, because it's transportable, we can respond faster to outages. When we talk about the growth on the network, this gives you a snapshot of what we look at. One of the key things is, there's no crystal ball. We look at data sources that are available, and councils are key data input into our plans. For example, we look at the district plans and the future development strategies that the councils have put out, and that forms the basis of where growth is going to occur in the region. Secondly, we also look at what the decarbonization trends are looking like, what sort of EV uptakes are we seeing in the country, and specifically in the regions that we serve, along with solar, and that feed into our long-term plans, and that help us understand where do we need to invest on the network. Lastly, we also interact directly with customers and communities through engagement, and that also builds on our plan to say, what are their decarbonization aspirations, where is growth going to occur, industrial, residential, and commercial. So over the 10 years, what we anticipate is there'll be around 800 odd new home connections that'll come on board, and around 3,500 businesses being connected to the network. To go in a bit of detail, just the next level of detail around Napier, there's around 3,500 odd new connections that we see, and the key features around this are the Manahururi development that is around the airport, alongside development around Parklands, Tiawa, Mission Hills, and Puketoi. So those are the areas that we anticipate will come on. Over to Jason just to talk about the pricing.
Yep, so how do we fund this investment? So we're regulated by the Commerce Commission, and the Commerce Commission sets limits on revenue, so what we're allowed to earn to ensure that it's a fair but not excessive regulated return, as we're a natural monopoly. And they also ensure that we invest enough to achieve minimum quality standards for outages. It's a fairly mature regime, so we've just moved into the third 5-year cycle, so really year 16 of what's called the input methodologies, and this is the default price path period, or default price quality path period number 4, which is trying to balance reliability and efficiency. So just drilling into what makes up a consumer's power bill. The sort of bottom 2 wedges there, green transmission, orange distribution. Those are the lines, both the national grid being Transpower and Unison in orange there. That makes up around 40% of a consumer's power bill. You can see what else makes it up. Generation's a large part, but in New Zealand, a lot of our generators are vertically integrated with retailers, or known as gentailers. And as you can see, that makes up more than 40% of that bill. So what's driving sort of increases in costs and price? Some of it is investment, and then that's good. We need to obviously continue to invest in the reliability of our network, ensure our assets are fit for purpose. But a big part of that investment is also focused on growth. Gagan talked about some of that growth that's coming out of more economic-driven growth, but we're also seeing growth in electrification due to decarbonisation. And as you can see, that makes up probably only about 10% of our price increases. We're also being given an allowance in this next regulatory period for some increased operational costs. I think everybody's experienced those, for example, insurance, but also ever increasingly the sector is becoming sort of digitised, so there's some allowances in there for data acquisition and software as a service. But almost 2/3 of the increases coming through from the Commerce Commission's input methodologies are actually just driven by essentially prices over the last 5 years not keeping pace with where interest rates went, so WACC, our cost of capital, and inflation, again, something Council will have experienced also. This is a sort of an illustration of the last two default price paths, so 2 and 3, and then DPP4 that we've just entered into. And you can sort of see the Commerce Commission's regime, while mature, does sort of have a wrinkle. It's sort of backward looking, so it looks at your historical costs and then makes assumptions about inflation and cost of capital and gives a revenue allowance going forward. But as we saw through really COVID, what they had projected when they set DPP3 turned out to be quite different from what happened. You can see in DPP3 prices actually went down, but now we're in that big catch-up. And what that means is, unfortunately for consumers, you get these sort of choppy changes to that sort of 40% of their bill, transmission, distribution, every 5 years when the Commission's methodologies reset. And particularly, I guess, for those grappling with water's done well, and the Commerce Commission potentially overseeing that, this is a feature that you'll just need to bear in mind and grapple with. So I'll hand back to Gagan.
So just talking about how we're changing the way our customers interact with us. We're going with a digital-first philosophy. We're streamlining all our processes so it just becomes easier for people to get in touch with us, to apply for a connection or an alteration. An example of that is this April we've published maps of a network which talk about where capacity is on the network. So you can go online, you can click anywhere, and you can see how much capacity is there on the network. For example, if a developer is looking at building a subdivision, they can have a look from an energy point of view, how much energy is available, so they can build that in their business plans and make informed decisions. So when they get in touch with us, they're already informed to start with, and then we can go ahead with the discussions. To give you, so in the end, we'd like to end by saying that, look, we are investing in Hawke's Bay. Building a resilient network is important for us, and enabling decarbonisation growth is critical for the region to thrive, and we're on board with that. So over the next year, we're spending $48 million in renewal of the network and growth. And over the 10 years period, it's around $600 million that we're spending on the network in Hawke's Bay. What we've gone through is just a snapshot of what the wider plan is. What I highly encourage everyone to do is we produce a 25, 30-page, very interactive guide, a summary of our 400-page long-term plan. So I would highly recommend for people around the table in the community to actually go there, interact with us, and please give us your feedback, thoughts, and questions. And that then feeds back into the plan next year, because we produce these plans every year. So it's important for us to be talking to the community and our customers and taking views on board so that we can build the network for our communities we serve. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason.
Yes.
Thank you, Kagan. I'll open up for any questions from elected members. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Just look at your, if you go back a slide, looking at your capital cost futures, looking at 20% increase. Is it just, no, back one.
Oh.
No, the second to last slide.
Oh, yeah, sorry. This one?
That one.
Yep.
So you're saying over the next 10 years, that's 20% a year increase. Is that just growth in the network, or how?
Renewal, maintenance, and growth.
Yeah.
So it's renewing the network as well.
Yep. And is that also ensuring resilience?
Yes. So whenever we are renewing or building new network, we are always taking into account the resilience aspect of it. So that's why I said, all our resilience decisions are backed by data and the studies that are out there to understand what is the impact of those assets in the areas that we are either renewing or installing new network on. So resilience is part of that. Is ingrained in our thinking.
Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, through you, Madam Mayor. Just on your last slide around the consultation, is there a defined consultation process or is it open-ended for people to feed back to you?
Yeah, great question. So it is an open process. We're not required to consult under the Commerce Commission's default price path regulation, but we want to hear from our community. We want to make sure that that voice is reflected in our plans and that consumers understand that the cost of some of the choices that we make. If under the Commission's regime, you can go down a path of seeking what's called a customised price path if you face particularly unique circumstances, and sometimes they can be resilience related. So Christchurch after the earthquakes, Wellington after Kaikoura doing earthquake strengthening. Under that customised price path process, you must consult.
Nice.
Councillor Bogue.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Some parts of Napier have their power lines on poles, and I was wondering, do you have any plans for undergrounding any of those areas?
Great question. So we, as part of our planning process, we're certified. We run a certified asset management system. And as part of that, we take into account the life cycle costs. So to give you an example, overhead power lines, undergrounding power lines is around 5 to 6 times more expensive than overhead. So when overhead power lines come up for renewal, that is one of the options that we take into account. But then again, it's a balance around the cost, the reliability, and affordability as well. So because at the end of the day, it's a community that's paying for the network. So, but there are other considerations as well. Are there schools nearby? All those factors come into play. So it's an asset management-based decision that we go ahead with.
So just following that, if you don't mind. So is the answer no?
No. In certain cases we do. In certain cases we do. There's definitely areas where we have undergrounded in the past, and it comes down to, do we have sensitive institutions like schools or medical centers and things like that. So it's a bunch of factors that play into that decision making.
Thank you.
Perhaps if I can just add a bit of context there. In the past, there have been undergrounding programs. Look, I think the best way to think about those was they were funded out of surpluses that the company earned under the direction of the shareholder. The current position of the shareholder, I think they campaigned on your check, your choice, is about those surpluses go back to consumers. So I guess there is scope if the shareholder was elected with that as being a priority for them, but that's not the case at the moment.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you. That answer was really helpful. That was kind of on my list as well, around how coordinated is the approach with our infrastructure team, for instance, around roading upgrades to work on undergrounding. And I would sort of encourage you to maybe take back to the board that it is something that our constituents talk to us a lot about. It feels like sometimes it's your lower socioeconomic areas that are impacted by overhead lines not being invested in to go underground, and so it is something that we see pop up a lot. My question for you is, you've talked a lot about community, and we obviously serve the same community. Sometimes we are working in a space where the assets that Unison hold become a barrier to development, for instance, things like that. And my question for you is, do you have a strategy around what a partnership looks like when we come up against those barriers? I think sometimes the costs can be quite a lot. I think about some of the pockets of land we've wanted to develop for community infrastructure, for instance, usually affected by overhead lines or significant mains, things like that. Do you have a strategy for partnering with us when we come up against those infrastructure barriers?
I mean, we absolutely have a partnership strategy, and I think firstly that's about aligning long-term plans. Where there are site-specific constraints, we need to look at those on a case-by-case basis. But ultimately, if that cost is going to be borne, by Unison as the infrastructure owner, it's going to flow through to all consumers' power bills. And I guess it's just working through, what's the most appropriate way to address that constraint, and should that be met directly by, if you like, the requesting party and dealt with that way, and that way presumably the beneficiaries of whatever community infrastructure is going to arise will be more appropriately allocated than through people's power bills. But where there are benefits to relocating infrastructure, in the long term from a network point of view, we will absolutely look to factor those in. I'm aware there's quite a big undergrounding job at the moment being looked at, and it's reasonably well advanced, and I think there's a bit of a positive message going to come to council fairly shortly around what the cost of that's looking like.
Fantastic, thank you. And just to round that off, is there anything we could be doing better to align that sort of long-term planning that you spoke of?
So we are working with all the councils that we in the areas that we serve, and there's coordination that happens at planning level to look at what's coming up in the next year, next 3 years in terms of projects where we can actually work together to benefit the community and reduce costs for the wider community. So there's a lot of effort. Isabel actually runs that for us and coordinates those meetings. So there's quite a bit of interaction that happens between the local councils and Unison around that.
Great, thank you very much.
Any further questions? No. Thank you so much for your time today and this update for us. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with you going forward.
Wonderful, thank you, and thanks for the questions, and we'll take those back.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on with our agenda. There are no announcements by myself. Are there any minor matters not on the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wise. I have a minor matter. I will title it Misleading Public Statements and Code of Conduct Obligations.
Okay,
Thank you.
Make a note of that for the end of the open session. Any announcements by management? None. Okay, we have confirmation of minutes, the draft minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on Monday, the 26th of May, and also Thursday, the 5th of June. If I could have mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gregg and Councillor Price. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Excellent. Into our agenda items. We've got a lot to get through, so I will be keeping us very much on track today, everybody. First up, we have the adoption of the annual plan, and we have Danica to present to us. And Caroline, welcome.
Good morning. This paper just summarises the process so far and presents the final annual plan for adoption. So I'll just take it as read.
Excellent, thanks, Danica. I think that's, I think we're all over this. We've been working on it for months and months. So this is the final step, the adoption. So I will just open up for any questions that elected members may have. Councillor Crystal.
Just through the Mayor, I think just for explaining the difference between what we went out and consulted on 7.9 and it's now ended at 8.9, can you please explain what has come into that extra percent?
I'll take that question through the Mayor. So we've had to allow for some water levies that the government will be charging us as part of the Local Waters Done Well So that was around 350,000. So we brought that in. We have to pass those on. And then we also opening the library, recommended or approved opening the library 5 days a week. So we rolled that back into the budget so that those combined items brought the rates increase up to 8.9%.
Thank you.
Any further questions or general discussion? Okay, I'm happy to move from the chair if I could have a seconder. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. So, yes, it's always a great day when we get to this final formal adoption of our annual plan. It's a significant milestone that reflects the hard work and careful consideration that has gone into balancing the needs of our community with the realities of our economic environment, which we all know is very challenging at the moment. And as many of you will remember, our 3-year plan projected a rates increase of 11.7%. And then over the past year, we've seen considerable pressures mount, largely pressures that are beyond our control. So this has included increases in insurance premiums, electricity costs, impact of inflation, just like our community has also experienced with their household budgets. So when we put together our initial draft of this year's plan, this led to a projected rates increase of just under 16%. That was unacceptable to us and to all of our staff, and so we put the pressure on, and there's been a lot of hard work to ensure that we came out with a more sustainable rates increase for our community. We took a hard look at our priorities, and we've had to make some tough calls. We've gone line by line through our spending, and as a result, we have landed with the 8.9% rates increase that we're adopting today as part of our annual plan. This reflects our council's ongoing commitment to keeping rates as affordable as we possibly can, whilst also continuing to focus on delivering essential services, particularly like our water supply, which is critical to the health and well-being of our community. At the same time, we have a responsibility to our city as a whole. We must ensure that we maintain and invest in the assets we already have. Deferring maintenance or underinvesting in our infrastructure today will only push the cost onto future generations. We also continue to face increasing demands from central government. Regulatory standards are rising, and while we support the intent behind many of these changes, the reality is the cost of meeting these new standards falls directly on us. Unlike other sectors, we don't receive central government funding to cover these obligations. Over the past 2 decades, we have worked very hard to keep rates low. And in fact, over that 20-year period, we've had some of the lowest rates increases in the country. And today, our average annual residential rates remain the lowest of the 4 Hawke's Bay city and district councils. But we also have to acknowledge that this approach is not sustainable. We must invest in our core infrastructure, and we must ensure our city is resilient, future-ready, and able to meet the growing expectations of both residents and our regulatory bodies. And I believe that the annual plan we're adopting today represents this balanced approach that we must take going forward into the future. It's a plan that keeps costs down where we can, invests where we must, and continues to put our community first. And as a final note, I do just want to acknowledge all of the staff and team and everyone that has been involved in pulling this together. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
I'll reserve. Thank you, Mayor Wise.
Okay, I'll open up for any other councillors who'd like to speak to the motion. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, through you, Madam Mayor. I agree with most, if not all, of everything that you've just said. I do just want to highlight the one area that I have hesitation with in this plan. I think in our efforts to keep rates low, given where we understand people are, I do feel like we've gone a little bit too far in underinvesting in our resilience and our adaptation for climate change. So as you say, we understand this isn't sustainable, and I would like to signal to the next council coming through that I think it would be wise to include more adaptation towards climate change in the next budget and look to install the resilience fund as we first went out talking about it. So a resilience fund that builds up a pot of cash that's available for response when we need it. It won't be if. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and we will certainly take note of that recommendation from you. Okay. Any further speakers? Councillor Price.
I've just got a short point I'd like to bring up. After listening to the hearings and we had to add a % on to from 7.9 to 8.9, I would have liked to have absorbed it. But after speaking with the CE and other staff, it's pretty tight and we couldn't do that. So the 1% is a little bit annoying to me, but I can see why we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had 3 speakers in support of the motion. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against? Okay, I'll pass to Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Wise. Just very briefly, I support all the comments that have been made. I appreciate the recommendation from Councillor Brown. I know that that is something that we could certainly look at for future councils. Yeah, I just want to echo, I think, the sentiment that you made around the financial sustainability of the sector. And I acknowledge not only Napier is the lowest rates in the region, we're actually the 3rd lowest of any city council in the country. And that goes to past management, which I think has been very prudent, but also acknowledges the huge amount of investment that is required in our core infrastructure, which you're seeing flow through into the rates rises that we have planned, not only this year, but obviously in our long-term plan. I want to acknowledge the recommendations that came through from Local Government New Zealand and Treasury around the sustainability of the sector. I think tools were looked at and recommended around returning GST on rates that we currently pay to central government, for a percentage return on GST on development that happens in the building sector, and a range of other tools that were suggested to provide local government with more funding streams than just, as our ratepayers often tell us, keep tapping them for more money when it's required. So I appreciate those comments. I think they are very relevant as we make the decision today to adopt our annual plan. And I hope that although local government is a very easy whipping boy for government to have, that they also take those recommendations around a more sustainable funding model for the sector seriously into the future. So thank you, Mayor Wise, and happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. On that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
I'm against.
Councillor McGrath. Excellent, thank you. Next up, we have the 25-26 rates resolution, and I would invite Gary up to present the paper.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So now that the annual plan has been adopted, it needs to be funded. So in this report, we're seeking adoption of the 2025-26 rates. And this is an administrative process under Section 23 of the Local Government Rating Act. I'll take the paper as read if there are any questions.
Excellent, thank you, Gary. Opening up for any questions. Fairly procedural and just confirming, obviously, as Gary said, how we actually fund the annual plan. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship. It's just actually a follow-on question from what Councillor Brown raised just in the previous paper in relation to the resilient funds. Now, I haven't got it right in front of me, but there is a resilient fund or rate. Could you explain, is that a rate that is accumulating to be available in the event of another major event, or is it a fund that can be dipped into as we go along, a little bit like the parking fund?
Of course. Through you, Madam Mayor. Let's take it back a step as well. So for the 25-26 rating year, it's going to be $17.50 per separately used or inhabited portion of a rating unit. Across Napier. So the purpose of it is actually both of those things. We can create a reserve from those funds, but also as we see fit and we need to invest in certain infrastructure and those things, the money can be spent on that as well. So we have the ability to grow it, but also to use those funds. So say, for instance, it may be that we need to spend money on radios as part of emergency kits around the various centres that we use in terms in an emergency. We may purchase those, but then again, if there's nothing that there's targeted for expenditure at that time, we can actually reserve it and set it aside for future expenditure for when emergencies do occur.
Okay.
So for both, really.
Thanks for that clarification.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I had a similar question. It was more to the statement made in under item 3, resilience rate. It says these costs would not otherwise be budgeted for or included in the long-term plan. I think we have to remember some time ago those costs were actually included in our accounts and our annual plans and our long-term plans. They were divested to the regional council to look after. We got caught short as a result of Cyclone Gabriel and have used this fund for that purpose. I think going forward as a council we need to consider reintroducing those costs back into our annual plans and long-term plans to ensure that we are funding appropriately within our community so that the resilience fund can be what it was originally set up for, to create that safety net for those significant occurrences that may happen in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. And certainly, as part of, and Dhinus may be able to provide more detail, but there is an absolute intention as part of the long-term plan process to start building back in a lot of those costs with regards to emergency management.
Yes, that's correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Gary, thank you for this. Could you explain the uniform annual general charge? How has that evolved or in the last few years, and how is it actually calculated? And is that an increase from last year, or at what amount?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So yes, it has increased. Every year our rates increase, and so with this rate, back during the last long-term plan, we did adjust it slightly. So, again, I have to take this back a step and try not to make this too boring or technical as well. So, within the rating legislation, the laws there, we're only allowed to have a certain amount of our total rates as a fixed component across all properties. And as a uniform annual general rate, it just means that every property gets charged the same amount. And so we're allowed to charge up to 30% of our total rates in that fashion. But that will include things such as the resilience rate and a few other things. It does exclude water. So as a general policy, during the last long-term plan, we looked at trying to keep that at around about 22%. So it does give room to increase, but we would like to keep that space if possible. So with regards to the uniform annual general charge, what we would use that for is it's really the indirect expenses that councils incur, so that the soft things such as libraries where there's no real targeted rate or you can't apply a targeted rate. And so some of that will go into it and a few other things as well. But really it's for those generalised expenses where you can't really assign it to any one particular property. It's just something that we all benefit from, or it's a function that applies to all of Napier. And so it has essentially over the last little while, the uniform annual general charge has increased in line with our rates increases. So, I don't know if it's exactly 8.9%, but it'll be somewhere in that ballpark for that increase.
Thank you.
Any further questions or general discussion? Okay. No? So could I ask for a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Councillor Mawson, would you like to speak to that?
Not really, just to say thank you for the work that was done, and we appreciate what's been put into this, and we're just going to have to, we're just sort of biting the bullet with our rates, and thank you for explaining it so well to us. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, just to add, whilst you noted that it is a very procedural thing, at the end of the day, there's a lot of work that's gone into this. So I really appreciate the team for the work they've done. Thank you.
Any further speakers? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Councillor McGrath. Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Right, moving on to the Napier City Council local alcohol policy, and I would invite Stephen to the front. Thank you. And Luke. Welcome to you both.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us today for the local alcohol policy. This is to obtain a resolution to publicly notify the local alcohol policy following the work that you've done and the directions given around that policy. Included in my report is a submissions analysis post-hearing. You'll recall hearing from submitters on this topic, and also reasons for the local alcohol policy, along with the draft as it stands at this point. And happy to take my report as read and take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Open up for any questions. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. On reflection after our deliberations, I was thinking that the committee process didn't really come through much in our deliberations. Could you please talk us through how this plan was delivered and how that committee added value, or how, yeah.
Oh, so that's the joint committee with Hastings?
Yeah, what role they had in the development of this?
Yeah, so that committee met once, and that was after the workshop that we had on the 30th of January. And the purpose of that was to seek alignment with, or to understand any areas of divergence between Hastings and Napier and what those might be. Following your deliberations, the committee didn't stand up again after that point, because the direction to us was clear at that time in terms of where you were looking to take the draft policy. So that committee was in place. It met once to consider any points of divergence with Hastings. That was prior to deliberation.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowe.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Talking about points of divergence from Hastings, do you have any idea what times they've come up with for their council meeting? I think it is today, their proposal?
Yeah, their equivalent of this meeting is later today. Reporting officer's recommendation, there are some areas of divergence around the on-licence hours. While no decisions have been made from their side or our side at this point, the officer's recommendation is a 2 a.m. close for the on-licence bars and taverns, and a 9 p.m. close for supermarkets. Yeah.
Any further questions? Okay. Open up for any general discussion. Okay, so I would like to ask for a mover and seconder, please.
Madam Mayor, I have got an amendment to the actual proposal. Is it now the right time to do that?
You can, yeah, if you put it on the table and then we'll open up for general discussion on it, absolutely.
Right. Okay, I did circulate it before, but it's in two parts, and it is amending the LAP with the following changes, and I'll do them one at a time. That the on-licence hours, to change the maximum trading hours from 8 a.m. till 2:30 a.m. the following day, with one-way door at 1:30 a.m. So I'm moving that, Madam Mayor.
Right, well, I haven't asked for a mover yet. I'm just asking what you're proposing, and then we'll have a general discussion.
Okay, and in regard to the off-licence hours, my proposal is that grocery stores and supermarkets and all other off-licence cease selling alcohol at 9 p.m.
Thank you. So we have a proposed amended motion. However, before I ask for a mover and seconder, I think we will open that up for any questions or general discussion. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Yeah, Thank you, Mayor Wise. I am genuinely interested, I guess, in the rationale behind the proposal, considering the recommendations we have from staff and Napier's kind of unique position. So are you able to talk us through the reasoning, Maxine, for the suggestion?
May I do that when I've moved the motion, and the rationale behind it then is I've got quite a thorough examination of that. Can you wait until we actually debate it? Because it is a matter of debating it, really.
Yeah, no.
I guess we can't ask questions and debate those, so I think we need an
okay.
opportunity now to ask questions to inform the debate. Yeah.
Right. I guess my concern was that that the rationale behind what we decide for the times is for us to address alcohol-related harm. And alcohol-related harm has been documented here in Hawke's Bay and in Napier. And by us deciding not to reduce the hours of trade, I felt that we were reducing the opportunity to address alcohol-related harm.
I'll allow Deputy Mayor Brosnan to continue, and then Councillor McGrath after that.
Because obviously, thank you for pre-circulating. I did a little bit of reading. I was struggling to find, and maybe this is an open question, I was struggling to find evidence that the reduction in hours has a material effect on harm. So the evidence that I read through was that there was a small proportion of alcohol that was sold at on licences compared to off licences, and that a lot of the harm is related to instances outside of licensed premises. And so that's my question, I guess. Do we have the evidence that it makes a significant difference in alcohol harm, what's being proposed?
I think the evidence that came through on the research that was presented to us, particularly from the police, was that any increase in trading hours for alcohol increases, and it's quite strongly supported by evidence, increases alcohol-related harm.
And through you, Mayor Wise, we're not proposing an increase, are we, in the current recommendations? It's status quo.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank
Status
you.
quo.
Councillor McGrath.
Through you, Madam Chair. Along the same lines of the reduction that I guess is closing from 10 at night to 9 at night, is there any evidence that the alcohol purchased at that time is causing the issues that you're trying to prevent, as opposed to any other hour in the day when the alcohol's purchased?
Can I, or do you want to? It's just, again, it's a matter of how many hours of trade there are. But also, the point that I'm going to raise in the debate is that if people are unable to buy alcohol later on in the evening, it could be that they're more likely to go to a more controlled drinking environment, pubs and clubs, where we heard from submitters there are good controls in place. So if they can't buy large amounts of alcohol after 9 o'clock, they may be more likely to go to a pub or a club where you're in a controlled environment and is safer.
And is there evidence to show that?
The evidence shows that the longer the hours of trade, the more harm that's done, basically. That's the evidence.
Question I really asked, right?
Councillor Taylor.
I think it's pertinent to raise that alcohol sold between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. doesn't actually have to relate to harm between 9 and 10 p.m. You could buy it between 9 and 10 p.m., not drink it till the next day and cause the harm at midday. So it doesn't relate to the time that it's purchased. It's just the evidence is that the longer the hours are open, the more chance there is of having harm. And this is the opportunity for us to make a difference.
I guess if I reflect on that and cast my mind back to the hearings, we need to be able to clearly demonstrate that alcohol sold between particular hours is leading to harm. That came through loud and clear from the submissions that we heard at the time. So there has to be a clear link for us reducing hours, an evidence-based link for us reducing hours, or we open ourselves up for judicial review. So that, just again reflecting on my recollection of the hearings process. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I was lucky to be on the committee with Councillor Taylor, the joint committee with Hastings, and we were presented with copious evidence from various studies around the world and New Zealand that indeed, if you increase the trading hours, you do increase alcohol-related harm. So that was the evidence that we were presented with, and that's what we went with.
Could I just respond to the suggestion that we may have a judicial review? Last year, the Auckland City Council was taken to the Supreme Court for their determination to close off licences at 9 p.m, and the Supreme Court decision on Auckland last year ruled that 9 p.m. is a reasonable closing time for trading. So I don't think we risk any judicial review if that's the number we come up with.
Councillor Price.
Just a couple of questions, Councillor Bogue. I'm a bit confused. You said that if we chop the hours back, they'll go to a hotel where it's safer? Is that right?
Where it's more controlled.
So why do you want to cut the hours back for a hotel or tavern?
I'm just going to, I'll explain all that when I'm only talking about cutting back a small amount of time, and I will give some evidence on that when I have the debate from the submitters, basically.
Okay, so the other question is, the person that wrote us a letter, the doctor,
yes.
Do you know that person?
No, never met
You don't know them?
Don't even know if
But they
it's a
sent
man
it
or
to
a
you,
woman.
did they? Was it sent to all of us or to you?
Beg your pardon?
I received it.
I received it.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent it to everybody.
No,
Oh, didn't you get it?
no,
Oh, you did?
from him.
From him.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realise that.
Oh, no, I just had some questions about it, but you don't know them, so you can't answer them.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. There seems to be a sticking point around whether we're increasing the hours. And so I was just interested in hearing from the staff, if you could summarise what the health professionals and the police and the health professionals said around the hours of availability. And I hear that there's evidence showing that if you increase the hours, that there is increased harm. Can the same be said for if you decrease the hours, there is decreased harm?
Yes, I'm looking at two medical officers in the group over there. So you heard from Dr. Matt Radford during the deliberations and the submission process, and also Dr. Alex Headley. There is good domestic and international evidence that the longer alcohol is available for sale, the increased alcohol-related harm. That is what we presented to the joint committee group. It was also in the research paper that I presented as part of the submissions process. So that relies on police data, as you've mentioned. We also looked at hospital admission data into the ED, and also a range of academic literature that's available. So that's basically where the research report was informed by, and basically what led to when we consulted on an hours reduction previously. So, yeah. Just to go to the point of what police police aren't in the room today, but their advice was an hours reduction, and that was presented after the deliberations and the appendices to the report. And you could ask the medical officer of health in the room if that was appropriate.
No. Thank you, Stephen. So, and I guess just a reminder that All of this information was included in our original deliberations through the hearings process. None of this is new information. It was all considered at length at the time alongside the numerous other submissions that were made at the time. So I would just ask all of you to bear that in mind as we proceed through with this agenda item today. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, your sentiments are bang on the mark. We're not changing the hours, and I think one of the things that the draft policy, one of the things that the retailers said to us, the supermarkets, at the moment the hours match their closing hours, and the volume of sales after 9 p.m. don't
minimal.
Yeah, they're minimum, and therefore we're putting a large burden on them to cordon off, close down areas of their retail to accommodate an hour's difference. And my question would be, so you can't buy it after 9 o'clock, don't you just go in earlier and buy it? All we're doing is shifting the period of time within which people will buy, and at the same time placing a large burden of cost and responsibility onto a retailer.
Okay, we're sort of starting to get into more general discussion as opposed to questioning. So I think if there's no further, Councillor Taraha.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question of clarification on the amendment. Is Councillor Bogue suggesting reducing the hours for on licence and off licence, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move forward into the formal debate. You've indicated, Councillor Bogue, that you would like to move the amended motion. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Is it adequately, you understand the wording?
Yeah,
okay?
Carolyn's got the wording of it.
So that the on-licence hours change the maximum trading hours from 8 a.m. till 2:30 a.m. in the following day, with one-way door at 1:30 a.m. So the original proposal that was consulted on was the maximum trading hours from 8 a.m. till 2 a.m. with one-way door starting at 1 a.m. What was landed on after the deliberations was the status quo of the existing LAP with maximum trading hours from 8 a.m. till 3 a.m. with one-day door restrictions at 2 a.m. My amendment is a compromise, moving to 2:30 a.m. closing time and 1:30 a.m. one-way door. One of the most vocal and influential submitters at our LAP hearings, Christopher Sullivan, the owner-operator of Roxon and the Thirsty Whale, offered us exactly that as a compromise in his written submission. This is what he said, quote, "We notice that police have a shift change at 3 a.m. and this is probably why the police prefer to have an earlier close. Although we prefer to keep a 3 a.m. close, we would consider a compromise to a 2:30 a.m. close with a 1:30 a.m. lockout if this helps the police with their shift change, as we could still function with a cover charge and keep our staff. Bar sales from 2:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. are very light. Most people just want to dance. We own a bar nightclub in Wanaka, note, a tourist destination, which has a 2:30 a.m. closing, and this operates very well. As a compromise, we would be happy to have a 2:30 a.m. closing and a 1:30 a.m. lockout, as we could still keep our cover charge and staff," end quote. So this would be a change that's agreeable to the operator most impacted by the change. It would also remove the issue of the staff losing hours that was a sore point in our original proposal. Secondly, it achieves a reduction in alcohol-related harm, as the evidence shows that late-night alcohol consumption is associated with harm. And thirdly, it comes close to the proposed times in Hastings and will likely reduce the risk of migration between Hastings and Napier in the early morning hours and the hazards that come with that. So in regard to the off-licence hours, you want me to continue with the second part? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
That grocery stores and supermarkets and all other off-licence cease selling alcohol at 9 p.m. The original and rejected proposal was to reduce trading hours for supermarkets to sell alcohol by 3 hours. going from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. and at the other end from 10 p.m. down to 9 p.m. Questions were raised about where was the evidence that the early morning trading caused alcohol-related harm. With bottle stores, the status quo was 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. They only open at 9 a.m. under the old anyway. And the proposal was to just go from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So this proposal's a compromise. Instead of reducing supermarket hours of trade by 3 hours, 2 in the morning and 1 at night, we're seeking a reduction of 1 hour only, so that all off licences, that's liquor stores and supermarkets, cease selling alcohol at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. is a reasonable closing time for trading. Big Barrel in their submission never mentioned having a position on trading hours. Hospitality Licensing Limited, a consultancy specialising in alcohol licensing, said that, quote, they had no problems with the closing time being brought forward to 9 p.m. People will just adapt and change their purchasing habits, end quote. And as I said, the Supreme Court decision on the Auckland LAP last year ruled that 9 p.m. is a reasonable closing time for trading. We also suggest, and it's just a hypothesis, that reducing late night, often excessive alcohol consumption may send patrons to the more regulated on-licensed premises, which showed us in their submissions how they looked after their clients and followed good practice. Closing supermarket and bottle store trading at 9 p.m. may mean that instead of purchasing alcohol to drink at home or in unregulated parties, patrons could be pushed toward drinking in regulated environments of pubs and clubs, boosting patronage on these. So these amendments acknowledge the desire that we all have of addressing alcohol-related harm, but without seriously damaging the businesses who legally provide alcohol. What we're offering is a clear middle ground between what was proposed and the status quo in a way that enables us to balance the industry view and the need to address alcohol-related harm in our communities. I urge you to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Councillor Taylor.
I'll reserve, please.
Okay, very good. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, just to speak in support of Councillor Bogue's amendment. Under the Local Government Act 2001, councils must develop long-term plans that promote community wellbeing. Hawke's Bay has one of the highest hazardous drinking rates in the country. All the evidence from the police and the District Health Board is pointing to a reduction in trading hours to reduce alcohol-related harm. If we retain the status quo today and do not choose to reduce trading hours, we are turning a blind eye to public health. Here is our chance to demonstrate true leadership and moral courage by doing what is right rather than what is easiest. If Auckland Council can show leadership by limiting off-licence sales to 9 p.m, so can Napier City Council. Let's not waste this one precious chance in 5 years to be a responsible council and do what is best for our community.
Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak against the motion, and I'd like to just sort of point out that when Mr Sullivan said about a compromise, that compromise was downward trend, not upward. We've gone with the status quo, so I'd imagine that Mr Sullivan would, not to say words out of his mouth, but the impression that I got, that if we wouldn't go with the status quo, then he would happily have a compromise. So in other words, that point is moot.
Thank you. I too will be speaking against the motion today. All the issues, the alcohol-related harm and evidence regarding this was discussed at length and factored into our previous decision and formal consultation process. Divergence from Hastings District Council was discussed at length during these hearings and factored into our decision making. So I can only surmise that we are here today relitigating our decision due to a letter we all received 2 days ago. And I cannot support a last-minute amendment based on a letter which was received outside of the formal consultation and submission process. Quite frankly, it risks undermining the integrity and fairness of the entire policy development. The proposed local alcohol policy has been carefully formulated based on all of the submissions received and heard during the designated consultation period, ensuring transparency and equal opportunity for all stakeholders to contribute. Allowing a last-minute letter to influence the policy after the formal process has concluded would set a very concerning precedent and would compromise the legitimacy of the Council's decision-making framework. It is important that all input be gathered and considered within the established timelines and formal process to maintain public trust and procedural fairness. So I therefore do not support the amended motion on the table today. Do we have any further speakers? Councillor Price.
I partially talk against the motion. I'm a bit confused because I think what Councillor Bogue is saying is right. People are safer in licensed premises, and that came out quite clearly, and it appeared Councillor Bogue was supporting that. I've got a 19-year-old son, and I guess I can sort of refer to things he tells me. I asked him this morning, I said, what do you do if you can't get into a bar? Go to a party. What do you do if you're in the bar? Sit on a drink because it's too dear to buy. What do you do at a party? We get on the piss hard. To me, that tells me I'd sooner have him in a bar where he's protected as much as possible, where there's security. And if there's something happens, as Mr. Sullivan said, it's all on camera, security. We've just seen an issue in Hawke's Bay or in Napier where nothing's on camera, and it's very difficult for the police to prove something. As to supermarkets, I'm going to listen to the rest of the debate. I don't see a problem. I think if anyone wants to get alcohol, they can buy it and rearrange their time to do it. I'm sitting on that one. But that's really where I see. When I listen to Councillor Bogue, I think should we be making the hours longer for bars so our problem stays in supervision? Not for 1 minute do I think that should happen, but I think the 3 o'clock. And by going to 2:30, it's still 3 o'clock that the people have to be out of the bar because there's a 30-minute drink-up time. Is that correct?
I think it's 30 minutes to get off the premises.
Yeah. So you can buy your last, under the proposal by Councillor Bogue, you can buy a drink at 2:30 and still be there at 3. Under the staying with the status quo, you can buy a drink up till 3 and still be there to 3:30. So yeah, I'm speaking against it. One part of it anyway at this stage. Thanks.
Any further speakers? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll speak in support of the amended motion. Firstly, I disagree that this undermines our process. This formal process has not concluded. Today is the final stage of this formal process. And if we cannot propose amendments now, that would infer that we all have to be predetermined before we get here. The point is that this is the final stage where we can still make changes. We have an LAP to reduce harm. This is a change which the medical officers and the police evidence all shows that this should reduce harm. It's a change which is supported by the single publican whose business this affects the most. And I think the impact on supermarkets does feel a bit overstated. They already close off lanes to restock shelves in the evening. It can't be that much of a major for them to close one more. And I do think, although you've mentioned, Mayor Wise, that we've already traversed this, 2:30 would align us more closely with Hastings, which was one of the key outcomes of this process, which we aligned at the start. So I am solidly in support of the amended motion.
You've already spoken to the motion, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I was really quite, I think, influenced by the letter that we had emailed to us the other day, and I wanted to really think about the process that we'd undertaken, the evidence that we'd been presented with through the hearings and the submissions as well. And where I've landed is actually that I'm going to speak against the amendment. I think that council, that we've retained a more nuanced approach that's appropriate for our city and our people. Whilst the Supreme Court made their decision around Auckland, they did not state that they required others to take on the 9 p.m. closing in other places. And in our region, the community was divided. Some supported stronger restrictions, but many asked us to balance personal responsibility, business viability, and enforcement practicality, as well as harm reduction. So the policy allows for localised responses through licensing processes, especially reflecting local neighbourhoods where risk is low and compliance is high. And while alignment is useful, we are not bound to mirror Hastings. The two cities have different patterns of nightlife, transport access, and venue concentrations. They're making their decision later on today, and I wonder if they'll be watching out to see what we decide. What I think actually matters is how we manage risk, and that happens through enforcement, community partnerships, and data monitoring. I think that council followed a really thorough process that is consistent with the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, including the special consultation, public hearings, and deliberations. The full record of submissions, written and oral, were all considered. So to me, the local alcohol policy is a key tool, and council has taken meaningful action. We're retaining one-way door, and we're updating our discretionary tools. We heard the community, and we've also considered very seriously what the experts have offered, and we've struck a balance that reflects both evidence and local context. And for those who think that we should go further, the LAP is not the only tool, and we continue to invest in community wellbeing through police partnerships, youth engagement, and advocacy for national reform around pricing and marketing. Those things are still available to us.
Okay. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I absolutely support double debate. I think it's important where new information is brought forward that can influence a decision. I think it's an important part of our process. On reading the documents, I didn't actually see anything that was startlingly new, although it pricked the old conscience. It made me think again, have we done the right thing? But it's not substantially new to the information that we heard during our hearings and public consultation process. So I too speak against the motion, because I don't believe a late submission that's providing similar information to that we have already received deserves any additional weight.
I just have a point of order. Our officer said that this doctor had submitted. Is that correct? So it's not new. He was a submitter.
We confirmed he wasn't. No. Are you certain that there was a submission? Because I did check that.
Yep, they both submitted, yep.
Oh, was it a joint submission?
You heard from Dr. Matt Radford.
Yes, we did.
And I believe there were other submitters in the online tool that was provided. So I think you find that...
We did a search on the name from who the letter was received from, and it did not appear in the list of submitters.
Does our team know about the letter we received?
I'm not sure.
And that he mentioned.
I received a copy of the letter,
You
yep.
did, okay. Right. Okay. Any further speakers?
Yeah, I can confirm there was a submission from the author of the letter.
Okay. Well, we need to check our search function. It didn't show them up. Right, if there's no further speakers, I'll return to Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I was very pleased that was clarified, that we aren't actually considering anything new outside of the process. And I'll take a slightly different angle.
We are.
What is the purpose of policy? Policy is not necessarily about the now. Policy is actually about the future. And I can recall back to the time when legislation from central government was introduced around safety belts, and there was a bit of kickback from old people like me. Why do we have to wear them? Now they're part of life. Then there was legislation around the sale of tobacco, that it had to be in certain places covered up and all of that. Why was that legislation introduced? To reduce the harm from smoking and the sale of tobacco. So our policy is the one opportunity, and I think in previous debates, Councillor Simpson has mentioned, here's one that we have some control over. It's not coming from central government, it's coming from us. It's an opportunity for us to take a stand. I note that in the discussion around the annual plan, the Mayor mentioned the words, the health and welfare of our community. So let us do something significant now for the future health and welfare of our community by reducing the hours by a massive half an hour at the end of the day or early morning and 1 hour when we're talking about supermarkets. Let's take this opportunity with these amendments to make a considerable difference to the future health and welfare of all of our community. The evidence is overwhelming that the availability of alcohol has a direct negative relationship with alcohol-related harm. We have an opportunity to reduce this harm now and in the future. But there's also a byproduct of this. Reduce the burden of harm. By reducing the burden of harm, we actually reduce the burden on our hospitals and reduce the burden on our police. And that may allow them to deal with matters that are more appropriate. If our hospitals are not being clogged up from 11 or whatever the evidence showed, from 11 p.m. at night till the early hours of the morning, and I've seen it over the last week considerably, then we are reducing the burden on those services through a simple half-an-hour reduction of one off licence, on licence, and an hour at an off licence. It's our responsibility. Now is the time for us to show some real leadership, some real commitment, no sitting on the fence, no abstentions. Let's put a stake in the ground and make a difference for the now and the future of this community by reducing alcohol harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bogue? No,
I won't
no,
speak, no.
Okay, I will put the amended motion then, and we might need a show of hands here, I think. All those in favour, if you could please raise your hands. And against. So the motion does not pass. Thank you, everybody, for that robust debate. We'll return to the substantive motion, which is the A and B in your papers. Could I ask for a mover and seconder, please, for that? Thank you, Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Mawson. Did you wish to speak to that, Councillor McGrath?
No, I think all was said at the hearing and we've heard today. So.
Thank you. Councillor Mawson?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? So I'll put that, all those, and again, we might have to do a show of hands. All those in favour, please raise your hands. So I think we will have the opposite of what we had previously for the minute taker and against. And that is carried. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in the debate. And thank you, Stephen and Luke. Appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay, we have got a few people ducking out of the room, so we will take just a very, very short 3-minute adjournment, and then we'll be on to the Citywide Reserve Management Plan. Kate and Deborah. Citywide Reserve Management Plan. Welcome to both of you.
Morena, lovely to see you all.
Lovely to see you.
Good morning. Yes, good morning, everyone. So we're here to present the paper for adoption of Citywide Reserve Management Plan. We did a lot of work during the year, and this is literally a very last step. We're taking that paper is read. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, open up for any questions from councillors. I think this one is pretty straightforward. It was well traversed in our previous deliberations on it. Councillor
Yes, I do
Bogue.
have a question. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. You do mention the alignment with various strategies, the disability strategy and whatever. I just wondered about the positive ageing strategy, if you'd considered that as being part of your, what you support or fit in.
I can answer that one. I mean, I don't think it's been considered specifically, but we've got some general policy framework in there where it would, if decisions were made that were influenced by that strategy, I think officers would take it into account.
Yes, we
I don't
will.
think it's listed, is probably what I'm...
It's not listed.
No.
I couldn't find it, yeah.
It didn't come up in submissions, which is, we could add it.
Yeah, but anyway, when we're preparing something, we are making sure that we are aligned with the other policies.
Oh, if you just have a consideration for including that one.
It's always the challenge, isn't it?
It is.
They
Where do you draw the
change
line?
and you list them and then some
Yeah.
are not in and some are. Yeah.
Any further questions? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Crown, seconded by Councillor Simpson. Would you like to speak to that?
Just quickly, Madam Mayor. Yeah, really just to say that the work that the team did, especially in engaging with stakeholders and submitters, I thought was exemplary on this this piece of work. So thank you, guys. I think where we've landed is really practical. There's some thought given to the future, and how it interacts with the more localised plans that we have available to us as we move forward. And it was a great piece of work, so thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, and probably just to follow up on Councillor Bogue's question, I think our reserves are an important asset to not only our city but our visitors, and they do encourage positive recreation, walking dogs or recreational walking and exercising. So I think there's positive outcomes in many ways through the adoption of this policy.
Any further speakers to the motion? So I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Easy, thank you.
Too easy. If only they were all that easy. Okay, we now have the adoption of the Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025, and I'd invite up Stephanie and Sarah. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you again for having us. This report is just following on from the information report that we did on the 5th of June earlier this month. And the purpose of today's report is to obtain a decision from Council on the adoption of our Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025. It is a legal requirement of the Waste Minimisation Act 2008 to have a bylaw in place when it comes to waste. So just our officer's recommendations today is that Council receive the report titled Adoption of Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025, and that you adopt it, please. It's attachment 1. Also, that Council delegate authority to the Chief Executive all duties and actions under the Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw, and direct officers to request relevant sub-delegation from the CE to perform the duties and decision-making required under this bylaw. Take the report as read. Happy to take any questions.
Awesome, thank you. Open up for any questions from councillors. Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Stephanie, just to acknowledge the massive amounts of work that have gone into this bylaw, thank you so much. When is the next time that this bylaw will be reviewed?
Thank you for your question. Through you, Madam Mayor. It will be reviewed in the next 5 years, yeah. It was done under the Waste Minimisation Act, so it's a 10-year until a new one needs to be done, but part of the process is every 5 years, yeah.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you very much for the bylaw. Could you just run me through one of the provisions I'm particularly interested in, and that is around the private supply of waste receptacles and their ability to collect mixed waste in those, so green waste mixed with general refuge?
So thank you for your question, Councillor Brosnan, through you, Madam Mayor. So their ability to, is your question that their ability to just accept general waste and that it's not separated?
Yeah, and the reason for my question, just for context, is I recall it was a number of years ago I sat on the WMMP, the one previous to this, and there was a recommendation that, it should, we through bylaws should restrict the ability of private operators to collect general waste mixed with garden waste. Is that something we have done, I guess is my question?
Yes, so we do have it in our bylaw that we have people or waste operators or anybody, we have to separate our waste accordingly. We have it also in there about licensing for private operators, but that is not, it's not a clause, it's only a control for that. So we can work alongside them, with them, and ensure that whatever they accept as general waste, we also, because we jointly own Omaranui Landfill, we are able to do a lot more controlled visual waste assessments where we know what goes into landfill, and when there are things coming into even at our transfer stations as well as at the landfill, we are able to understand where it's coming from and then address the issue with people.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Wise, if it's okay, I just want to hone down because I want to understand the answer to the question. So you said it's not a clause, it's a control. Are you permitted as a private waste operator to pick up mixed waste curbside?
Yes.
And dump it?
You can as a private operator.
Why is that, when that is a recommendation through the WMMP, that through bylaws, the waste bylaw, we prohibit the ability of private waste operators to encourage their, for instance, their customers to top up their general waste bin with their lawn clippings?
Yes, like I said, we do have the ability to look at that when it gets to our transfer station or to Omaranui Landfill, that we are able to see what is in the load and then address it. So if they could go ahead and they pick up paint, for example, and they come and drop it off, it's a prohibited item at our transfer station, we can go back and we can address that issue with them. So it's not that they are allowed to put whatever they want to in their bins and pick it up. We encourage people to please separate their waste accordingly. Take their hazardous waste to the appropriate places that accept it. Take their garden waste, separate it from their general waste. So there's a lot of education that goes on. We know people dump whatever they want to into their bins, but we as officers and waste staff, we work alongside our waste operators and communities to ensure that things are separated and know where it needs to go.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Wise, I really want to get to this point because there's a lot of information in what you're giving me there, but I think the answer is no. We haven't prohibited the ability for waste operators to encourage their customers to top up their general waste bins with green waste. We have not done that. Is that correct?
We have
the ability, through you, we have the ability through the bylaw to prohibit that, and we haven't done that. Is that correct?
Do you think we've done that?
Are we able to come back to you on that one? I just want to make sure we have a really clear answer. I'm not sure if we have. It's obviously discouraged. And as Steph said, when we identify someone that has a really high volume of green waste and what they're disposing at a transfer station or a landfill, then we use an education approach. But we haven't taken a heavy regulatory approach, particularly when it comes to dictating what private operators can take through their own systems. So we can come back with you with a clarification on that specifically.
And just to add to that, speaking to some of our waste operators, we know in the private sector, not just through our munis, they encourage when they speak to their own customers, when they pick up loads, to have the correct items in there. So even if they do a green waste collection and they see general waste in there, they address it with their customers directly. So, but no, it's not. We can get back to you on whether or not we've fully addressed it in our bylaw as such, but we know from speaking to some of our other private operators that they address the issues directly with their customers.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. I'm just for, if you're happy to take a point of discussion on this. This is a really big issue for me, and it's a big issue because I recall from the WMMP hearings, like I say a number of times ago, green waste going into our landfill is our biggest opportunity for change. It is our biggest effect on why our landfills are filling up as quick as they are. It is our biggest issue. And, well, we have lots of big issues in waste. But the ability for councils to regulate that private operators do not dump mixed waste, green waste mixed with general waste at the landfill, was flagged as being something that councils could only control through their bylaw, and that they should do so. And so having a bylaw in front of me, and I was reading through and I was trying to find it, and there's little bits in there, but I wasn't able to find where staff could go to private operators and say, make sure your customers know that you cannot put green waste in your bins, because how often do we talk to our community or they talk about waste and they go, oh, if my general waste isn't full, I top it up with my lawn clippings that week. So I'm really struggling with adopting the bylaw if it doesn't address what I see as one of the easiest wins we could make in the green waste diversion space.
And thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, for highlighting this. However, it may have been helpful if this was highlighted earlier in the process.
I understand I was not at the hearings for this. Yeah, so this is my first look at it.
Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Can I suggest a procedural thing? If we look at Chapter 5, where it says waste, including recyclable material and organic waste, must be separated out. I wonder if we might give the staff some time, like lay this on the table, give them some time to come back with clarifications and pick this paper up at after a few papers. Would that work?
I guess we need to have an understanding around what timeframes and obligations we have in terms of, is there any risk associated with laying this on the table? Will we not meet some timeframes we need to meet?
We're all right to carry on. Can I just clarify, is it just your concern with private operators? Because our rules are to separate, our contractors won't pick up a muni bin, a wheelie bin, if it's got green waste in it.
Correct.
Okay, so just private.
Just one. Did you have a question, Councillor?
Just a quick question, yeah. Are there any private tips that private operators use?
Not to my, through you, Madam Mayor, we only have our Redcliffe one in Hastings, but there are also the other class landfills, but they won't. It's your monofills, and they won't take general waste. It's only, and you need to be a registered person to drop off waste at Omaranui landfill. So they know exactly who's coming in with what. And yeah, we've got our transfer station. And that would just be the general public and waste operators that would, most, I'm not going to make the assumption, but there's a lot of the general, the public waste operators that would go straight to Omaranui landfill, and it's usually residential waste that comes and commercial waste that comes to a Redcliffe transfer station.
Councillor Taylor.
Can I just ask a question of clarification there? You just said that our contractors will not pick up waste, green waste, in our black bins. How do they know? Already tipped it.
Through you, Madam Mayor. When that bin's full and they can see it, there are about 7 cameras on each truck and they can see it. So they'll drop it. Sometimes it's too late, yes, but there's often that we know exactly where that was coming from. It was left there. We could get a call to say, oh, my bin wasn't collected. We can send them the footage and say, this is exactly why we didn't. There was concrete in it, there was green waste in it, there was a gas bottle in it, things like that.
And
So we
put
are,
it back down.
yeah, they put it back down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to seek some clarity, Councillor Brown, you would be moving that we lay it on the table to actually seek further clarity from council officers as to whether, based on what you read out, that we do actually have the ability to restrict private operators from collecting green waste.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it seems like it might be like a 20-minute just double check and whether they might be able to see if they could do it whilst we're still talking and bring the paper back later today.
That's fine.
If that works for you.
I guess and probably in line with Councillor Taylor's question, what I'm trying to probably get my head around is, even if we do have it in the bylaw, how do we actually monitor and regulate that? You know, until they turn up at the landfill, and what would that be then? We're not inspecting what they're dumping before they dump it, so we can't turn them away anyway. I guess I understand what you're trying to achieve, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, but I just don't know that we actually have the ability to do that, even if our bylaw does state that we're doing it, which it seems to state that we can do it.
I think that's common with all regulatory things. So
Yeah, that's right. So I guess it is really just the clarity around what the bylaw actually is attempting to enforce.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Wise, what I'm looking for is certainty in the regulation that it is not permitted, so that communication can be clear to private operators and therefore flow through to customers, because I do not think that private bin customers understand they cannot put green waste into their general refuse bin currently. I've had a number of conversations like that, as has the WMMP had submissions on it. So it is our role to advise them what the regulations are. They then advise their customers, and hopefully there's a positive outcome as a result.
Yeah, okay. So along that lines, I think we will just adjourn the paper as opposed to doing a formal lay on the table. And if you could just sort of pop away and have a look to see what the wording is and whether it does actually prohibit that, and then following on from that, that then becomes how we operationalise that in terms of communication to private operators, etc. But having that clarity around what the bylaw actually allows would be great. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Lovely. Right, didn't see that one coming. Okay, next up we have the Napier Hastings Future Development Strategy, and we've got Paulina and Flair's back from holiday. Welcome back.
Just imagine. You're a constituent.
Very good, and we do have an amended recommendation which has been pre-circulated to all of you, and Paulina will be speaking to that, so thank you.
Yes, good morning everyone. The purpose of my paper today is to seek your approval of the Future Development Strategy, which I'm going to refer to the FDS from now on. The FDS is a very important document for Napier, as it sets up the future long-term growth, so that we're talking about 30-year growth plan for the region, including Napier, obviously, and it's referred to residential, industrial, and commercial development. The document also is very important for the preparation of an infrastructure strategy, and it helps us inform all the investment through the long-term plan as well. So it's a really important document. It's a legal requirement under the National Policy Statement for Urban Development, and it has been developed over the last 18 years. It takes a long time to develop a future development strategy, and we have done regional collaboration in the development of these documents with the HDC, Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and our Mana Whenua partners as well. The FDS has gone through a very extensive consultation and engagement process with the key stakeholder and the public as well. It was released for public feedback at the end of last year. And the submissions were heard by an appointed independent hearing panel that was appointed by the joint committee, the FDS Joint Committee. The independent hearing panel said some recommendations that were discussed at the Joint Committee meeting on the 19th of May this year. So the agenda paper that I'm presenting to you today is the same paper that is going to be presented to HDC this afternoon for adoption, and it was presented to Hawke's Bay Regional Council yesterday, and include the recommendation to approve an FDS document as per the recommendation of the independent hearing panel, which include a specific site, Riverbend Road. So this is a little bit of a departure from the recommendation from the Joint Committee done on the 19th of May, which recommended to adopt an FDS with the exclusion of Riverbend Road. So there has been an unexpected event that occurred yesterday, and that's why I'm tabling some changes to the agenda, which is that the Regional Council yesterday adopted a version of the FDS, but exclude two sites. One of them is in Hastings, in Middle Road. There were two sites in Middle Road. They recommended to exclude that, and they also recommended to exclude again Riverbend Road on the basis of the susceptibility of the site to natural hazards. So due to this outcome, now I'm recommending to table some changes to the paper, and I don't know if they can be put in the, I'm aware that you have seen that. It was distributed this morning, but if we can have them in there, I can talk to that in the screen as well. So basically there's some minor changes in recommendation E and F, reflecting obviously the change of departure from Regional Council. And we are changing the recommendation to adopt for the word approve, because we cannot adopt an FDS that is not the same with the other local authorities. And we are recommending the inclusion of two more recommendations, recommendation H and recommendation I. Recommendation H notes that the Regional Council did not endorse the FDS, endorse a version of the FDS with the exclusion of the sites that are already mentioned. And recommendation I directs officers to work together, so all partner council to work together, and prepare a final joint FDS, which reflects the decisions that this council is going to make, Hastings is going to make, and the Regional Council made yesterday. So we can come back to the council and adopt the final FDS. So that will be a next step on the process. And I will be seeking your worship endorsement of these amendments as well of the paper today. So I can respond to any question if needed.
Thanks, Paulina. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Worship, through you. In relation to I, where you're directing staff to work together, Is there a time frame around that as to when a final FDS would be presented?
Yes, there is a timeline, and we would endeavor to do that as soon as possible, really, so we can have an endorsed and adopted FDS before elections. Yeah.
Before October?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate to actually include that in the resolution so that we've got a time frame in there?
Yes, we can include that. However, we're aiming for that, but yeah, I would say that maybe it's a little bit tricky to commit to a specific date.
Yeah.
As things are going.
Okay, Councillor Crystal.
Through the Mayor, so in relation to how do you see this panning out? You have different recommendations from different councils. How's that going to look in a final FDS?
Yeah, you're correct. I mean, it would be more or less similar to what it went out for public consultation at the end of the year, because the regional council expressed concerns about including those sites, and therefore we went to the public with some wording that reflected the discrepancies. So I see the FDS. I cannot preempt how it's going to look like because we have to work together with the different councils, but there would be a version of the FDS, one version of the SDS that notes the points of difference, which reflects, I guess, the decision that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council did yesterday, and hopefully the HDC are going to adopt the same wording. So these amendments are also going to be presented this afternoon to Hastings District Council as well.
Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just further to that question from Councillor Crystal, if a developer did want to develop, say, Riverbend Road, how does that work with discrepancies between the councils? What process would they have to go through?
Yeah, there are a couple of processes available, but maybe, Fleur, do you want to answer that?
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. So you may be aware that the district plan is currently going through a hearings process at the moment. One of those matters is around rezoning, and there is a submission from the developers of Riverbend Road to rezone that land. In terms of the considerations that need to be met in terms of whether the site is appropriate for development, those are all things that are considered through that rezoning process already. And then through any resource consent process, again, the same happens, but in much more detail. The future development strategy is at a very high strategic level, and so the level of detail that's needed at a rezoning, and certainly at a resource consent level, we don't need to go into that level of detail at a strategic level. So there's multiple processes whereby these things are considered.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Yeah, I've got a couple. The first one relates to the word change from adopt to approve. What happens if we just adopt?
If we adopt, then we will end up with a different FDS, which is the Regional Council version of the FDS, and then an NCC version of the SDS, an HDC version of the FDS. So that can potentially pose some risks. So a way to mitigate is to approve the version as it's done in the paper, then work on a final joint FDS that we can come and recommend to the council to adopt. All the three partner council adopt the same document. If not, we're going to have two separate documents adopted.
Could I just tease that out, my understanding? So if we adopt an FDS today and say Hastings adopt the same, as I understand we're putting the same version potentially to each of our councils, so you end up at the end of today with a FDS jointly adopted by Napier and Hastings, not adopted by Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Hastings and Napier are then compliant with our responsibilities to adopt an FDS, and you could still retain the substantive intention behind I whilst being compliant.
Yeah, I guess it's an option, but what you end up is with two adopted versions at a regional level of FDS. So you would have a FDS that is Hastings Napier and an FDS that is the regional council. And therefore it set the signal, it is confusing for the public and developers to have two versions that have been adopted by the council. So the best way to proceed with that situation is in relation to, okay, the council now are going to work together and adopt one FDS. So this paper is going to go to the regional council as well, so adopt a final one version of the FDS.
Through you, Mayor Wise, I'll pose it like this. Is it idealistic to think that after all of this and everything that's gone into it and all of the complexities and the different views around the table, that you'll be able to achieve I? So what is the risk that we adopt I, we don't adopt the FDS, we say approve only, so we're not compliant with our responsibilities under the policy. We send you off to do your darndest to come up with something joint, which quite frankly we've been trying to do for a long time now and have been obviously unsuccessful. What makes you think that we will come up with anything better or different that is agreeable to all parties?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll just jump in here, Paulina, and then I'll get you to answer that question. If today we adopt a different version of the FDS to what the Regional Council adopted yesterday, I would say that we don't have an FDS, a regional FDS, so we wouldn't be compliant. And what we're proposing here is to give us an opportunity for us to come up with some wording that could go into one version of an FDS where we can actually achieve that compliance. And the decision of the Regional Council yesterday, officers that we've spoken to recognise that there needs to be a bit of a mop-up exercise to be able to achieve that outcome, and what we're asking for is the ability to do that. And if we're not successful, we will bring it back, and you will then be able to look to either adopt the version that you want and understand the consequences or the impacts of what that might be.
Keep pondering, thank you.
I know, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Councillor Crystal.
Just through the mayor, so the regional council have adopted, so then what happens with that? If we are only approved but they haven't adopted, do they have to then go back and re-adopt a new one?
Yes, that's correct. That is what Rachel mentioned as a mop-up recommendation. Yeah, they would have to re-adopt the final version.
Any further questions? No? Okay. I am happy to move the amended recommendation from the chair. Is that a seconder there, Councillor Crown? Yeah, as has been highlighted by the Deputy Mayor, this has been an incredibly long, drawn-out process with many challenges along the way, and unfortunately, still some further challenges ahead of us, I'm sure. But I do support the motion to approve the FDS and direct staff to work with our partnering councils to see if we can find a resolution whereby all partner councils can agree and adopt a joint FDS. Because this really is a crucial step in our long-term vision and for the future of Napier. We have to provide a high-level strategic framework to guide our growth and development over the next 30 years. That's a non-negotiable. We have to do this and we have to find a pathway forward. The strategy is all about meeting the needs of our growing population, meeting the housing needs for our community, and it's about ensuring that we continue to build a city that is vibrant, sustainable and accessible for future generations. So it deserves the extra time that will be required. What I think is really important to note, and as a member of the Joint Committee, I've repeated this so many times, the inclusion of any site within this document does not mean that development is a given or automatically granted. Every proposed development must still go through the legislated resource consent process, where it will be subject to careful scrutiny to ensure it meets all necessary standards, regulations and community expectations. I also want to acknowledge the robustness of this process to date and the important role played by the independent panel of experienced commissioners who were tasked with thoroughly reviewing the proposed strategy, considering all of the submissions and providing independent professional recommendations. The strategy we're approving today is based on those recommendations from the independent panel of experts. We all understand that one of the key challenges we face here in Ahurira Napier in terms of growth is the availability of suitable land. Land is a limited resource here, and while we have identified potential sites for development, we also acknowledge that not all land is equally suitable for housing. And I guess, as has been highlighted by the Regional Council, Riverbend Road is one of those sites that has challenges, as does Ahuriri Station, another site which the Regional Council has not challenged. They do both come with significant natural hazards, and this poses real challenges for developers, and it is critical that they demonstrate through the resource consent process that they have the capacity to effectively mitigate these risks. That is what the resource consent process is for. We must ensure that any development is safe, sustainable and aligns with our broader environmental and community goals. The onus is on developers to provide evidence of how these challenges will be addressed before any building can proceed, and this is a non-negotiable. Ultimately, the goal of this strategy is to guide us toward a future where Napier continues to thrive as a place to live, work and raise a family, while also protecting our environment, respecting our natural heritage and meeting the needs of both current and future generations. As with every decision we make, we must get the balance right. It's not just about identifying land for housing, it's about creating communities that are safe, sustainable and resilient in the face of the challenges that come with growth. And I believe that the future development strategy we are approving today provides us with a tool that will help us to achieve that vision. Thank you. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to double down on a couple of things you said, but firstly, I just want to acknowledge that this is a requirement of councils via central government to plan ahead so that we're not caught out unprepared by the demands of a growing population. It's also an example of how we can work with our partner councils. That's something that we are being asked to do more and more often. So it's us, Hastings District Council, Mana Whenua. We're looking to ensure that growth supports our people, environment and our future generations. But the language and the concerns expressed by our whanaunga at Hawke's Bay Regional Council have rightly highlighted these aspects, although in my mind, they have been really quite emotive in some of the terms that they've used. And I'm worried for the level of anxiety that causes for our communities when they hear some of those comments. What I think has been missed out, though, is enough of a weighting given to what the future development strategy is not. As has been said, it is not a green light for building to start tomorrow. It does not approve consents or guarantee funding for infrastructure. It is not a detailed construction plan or a promise that every area marked for growth will actually be developed. It is a roadmap, a high-level guide, not hugely detailed, simply saying that these are the best places to grow of what we have left, noting that there are very few easy spots remaining. I think the change signals the commitment that we have to continue working in partnership, and I hope that we are able to land somewhere where we agree with all three parties and our mana whenua partners to make sure that we balance housing demand, affordability, climate resilience and cultural values, whilst noting that any actual development will still go through community consultation, environmental assessments and consenting approvals.
Okay. Councillor Bogue.
Just sort of a procedural issue. If consensus was essential for the resolution of this long, complex and expensive process, was there anything decided sort of at the beginning when setting it up? Would there be a mediation process which would kick in the case of disagreement? And if not, would this be a good thing to do if we found ourselves in a situation like this before we actually, undertook it?
I think that there is a possibility of those avenues, and we haven't explored them yet, but it's getting to a point that we will probably be considering those as well.
Any further speakers to the motion? Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. My thinking is very aligned with what both Councillor Crown and yourself have said, Mayor Wise, and I just thought I'd flesh out. I think that I can see why our HBRC councillors made the decision they made. I think they're in a rock and a hard place when it comes to this. All of the points that they raised are valid. The risk to life from flooding, protecting fertile soils, and HBRC's role of leadership in that space. And I get that optically it looks bad if they endorse this area that's in a floodplain in a planning document. And I think, as Councillor Crown pointed out, their fears that this is seen as a green light to development, if it's included in the plan, and the risk, the level of reputational risk to their organisation, I can understand optically why they may be feeling like that. From the information we've had though, and as Councillor Crown pointed out, this is by no means a green light, and there's still several processes to be satisfied. And sadly, I just think that this feels like an area where our regional collaboration has fallen over. Unfortunately, our process didn't allow it, but it would have been really good to get all three councils in the room so that we can understand each other's point of view face to face. Because realistically, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. And I can understand that without being in the room, it may have looked to them that Napier City Council were determined on a course of action to build in places that present a serious flood risk. But I can assure, I'm very confident that nobody in this room wants housing at risk to flooding. And realistically, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. And our decision today is more about honouring the process we've followed, particularly the independence we've commissioned.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. We've had 3 speakers in support of the motion. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Fleur.
Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck. Now, yeah, can we do waste minimisation and back? And then we've got Sarah for the following paper as well, so that works out well. So back to the adoption of the Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having us back. All right. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Just to answer the question on the private waste operators and green waste, this is covered in Section 7 of the bylaw, and it explains their responsibilities as waste collectors and waste operators.
Deputy Mayor Boston.
Great, thank you very much. That was the certainty I was looking for in my first question. And my second question was going to be, how are you operationalising that with communication to our waste operators?
Thank you, Councillor Brosnan, through you, Madam Mayor. Like I said earlier, is that does come through when we see what is in the load.
Through you, Mayor Wise. No, I'm looking for how are we communicating to our waste operators that they are not able to pick up mixed waste at curbside from their customers.
Through the chair, could I help?
Yes.
So I think what you're seeking is some kind of
certainty
on us doing a press release or some communication program following regarding this once the bylaw is approved or adopted.
Correct.
We can do that.
Okay.
Absolutely fine. We'll
Thank you
ensure
for
that
that.
something happens to communicate that.
Yeah, thank you. Could I take that a step further? And I think it needs to be a direct communication to all of our private providers. Yeah, and a press release.
Yeah.
We'll double down. You, note that as an action. I think an action is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. That's
Well
great. So now I would ask for a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Tariha. Councillor Brown. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Tariha?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I support the adoption of the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan. I believe we all support the goal of reducing waste and promoting sustainable practices. I think it's what's often not well understood, though, is that the Oamaranui landfill operates as a business, and when less waste goes to the landfill, revenue decreases, and so there's a bit of a balance that we have to keep in mind, and that impacts the fees at the gate. So less rubbish going to the landfill increases gate prices. So, but while this may have an impact on households and businesses, the long-term environmental benefits and the need to reduce pressure on our landfill make this necessary and a responsible step forward. By adopting this plan, we are committed to smarter waste management, greater resource recovery, and a more sustainable future for Aotearoa. And yeah, just like to thank the team for the mahi, taking a while to get here, and yeah, kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Just very briefly to say huge thank you to the team. This is a great piece of work, and it basically gives teeth to some of the elements in our WMMP that we signed off earlier this month. So brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. Thank you very much, Steph.
Thank
And
you.
We've got
Lovely.
Sarah staying on for the trade waste bylaw review. Being joined by Russell in his orange sweater.
Cool.
Right, off we go.
Kia ora koutou. So bringing a report to you today which presents the findings and recommendations from the recent review of the Napier City Council Trade Waste and Wastewater Bylaw undertaken by external consultant Richard Bax. The review was initiated following we started implementing our bylaw, and it makes a number of recommendations on addressing gaps and ways for us to improve how we use and manage that bylaw. The paper follows a workshop with Council on the 8th of May. I will take the report as read, but I will just cover off a few of the key recommendations that Richard has made. The first one being the incorporation of an appeal process into our trade waste bylaw. So he has looked at how other councils manage that, and a number of them have an option where if a officer decision is disagreed with, then they can go to the CE for an appeal, and the recommendation is to include that process in our bylaw. There was a legal review component to this review, and that review highlighted some areas where we could improve as well, mainly around the interaction of our trade waste bylaw with our administration manual. Currently, there is a significant amount of crossover between the two documents, and the guidance is to separate those out so that actions that council could enforce are solely held within the bylaw, and the administration manual is a supporting guidance document. There is also a recommendation around how we charge for trade waste. The 2022 bylaw, the current bylaw, allows for us to charge for contaminants or characteristics, but that change hasn't been implemented yet. So we sought some advice on whether that was still a good option. The advice was yes, it is worth implementing, but keep it simple for everyone to use and manage. He also made a few operational recommendations around how we communicate with operators and roll out the bylaw. So today I'm seeking from you endorsement of the recommendations that have been included in this review, and following that endorsement of officers conducting a full review of the bylaw to implement the changes that have been recommended. Also seeking a review and amendment of the trade waste fees and charges based on those recommendations, and just noting that following a report that came to council in December 2024, that sub-delegations will be sought from the CE for delegations relating to trade waste to tidy up that work. Happy to take questions.
Opening up for questions. Councillor Price.
I'll just start. I got approached by someone, and we're talking about the low pressure sewage on property. How do you get on if you want to empty a swimming pool?
That might be a question to take offline, I think, Councillor Price. Some of our council officers. Or maybe someone that, specialises in pool maintenance.
It is in here as a...
Yeah, I just don't think we've got the people here that could probably answer that.
I thought it might have been easily answered.
Right now.
It was just a question I was putting.
Yeah, sorry, I probably could give a quick answer. You would look to restrict the flow to ensure that those, because they're little small pump stations, so that you didn't inundate it and cause an overflow. So, that'll be part of the education of the homeowner who has one of those devices. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's covered all I needed.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you very much, team. Just a couple of questions. In the paper, you refer to the recommendations and the review around the administration manual that currently supports. So just so I have that clear in my mind, with regards to compliance and enforcement, there'll be no areas of that internal manual that would be pointed to as a reason for non-compliance. All of that will be wrapped up in the bylaw. Is that the intention?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And I had a second question just in regards to resolution point D around the sub-delegation. Could you just flesh that out for me? When is that going to be sought, and what sort of delegation is that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, back in December we came to council seeking trade waste delegations under this bylaw, and the decision was that that would be approved pending this work coming back to council. So it's included there as just a note that this is the tidying up of that, and we'll be seeking those delegations following this paper being endorsed. That's an internal process for officers to seek delegations through Louise.
Could I just clarify, the delegations currently sit with council? Is that correct?
Following the paper in December, they got delegated to the CE.
So we currently have that in place now with the delegation through to the CE. The conversation around that council report was that because we didn't have that resolution, that yes, it did default to council through that process. So we felt that that was more operational in that sense and was appropriately sitting with the CE.
I just have a slightly different recollection, Mayor-wise, of that delegation happening. So you've double-checked the wording of that? There was actually a delegation given to the Chief Executive in December?
Yes. It was subject to a review of delegations being undertaken as part of the trade waste bylaw review. So this paper.
So where is, sorry, through you, Mayor-wise, where is the review of delegations that was subject to?
My understanding was that this was covering off that requirement, and it was subject to the review of some legal advice that had been received around the same matter, which was reviewed as part of this legal review.
So it was part of the brief to the independent review with, yeah.
And have we had his recommendations tabled? I'm just struggling to connect the process.
Yep.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, I'm hearing that there has been a change for the delegations to go to the Chief Executive as opposed to Council in the December paper. But Deputy Mayor Brosnan, you...
It was subject to a review of delegations, and I'm just asking
okay,
where
so the transfer of that delegation was subject to the review. And the review is completed or still to be undertaken?
My understanding was that the review was this paper that we're bringing to you today. We have also had the delegations reviewed from a legal perspective outside of this review.
Yeah, I think as part of the project, we have done that step. I do understand, I'm hearing what you're saying, that we possibly haven't brought it to the table for your for clarity, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Mayor Wise, I'm just trying to get the train of delegations correct. And so if we are today giving effect to passing those delegations from Council over to the Chief Executive, that's the intention of today by satisfying the December resolution. I'm not quite sure the resolution reflects that.
And what would you be seeking to satisfy the resolution?
I would just-
Visibility of the...
Yeah,
We have got...
Yeah, could Carolyn read out what we have passed?
That was actually in public excluded, that recommendation and report. I mean...
Is the Chief, could I get some advice from the Chief Executive? Are you comfortable that the train of delegations is correct? Because if you are, I'm happy. It doesn't make sense to me.
So through the chair, I've just had a message, someone saying that an officer's just advising that delegations are being presented to the 31st of July CCTO, and we could pick that paper up possibly at that time. So I think perhaps just change the recommendation. Well, as I say, it's not recommendation, well, it's in the recommendations, it's just a note. So perhaps change the wording to say that sub-delegations, or that will be considered as part of the wider delegations paper. Yep. We could bring on the 31st of July.
Thank you.
So do we need to actually make a change to the recommendation to that effect, or are we happy with what's in there? Do we need... That part D didn't need to be amended to...
So through the chair, I think because it's saying that sub-delegation will be sought for delegations relating to trade waste, we could add in some comments following the receipt of the delegations review to make it, if you want that clarity, I guess, looking to the Deputy Mayor as to what you would be seeking.
Yeah, I think that train makes a lot more sense. You're comfortable with that?
So I'm just saying that the sub-delegation will be sought from the Chief Executive for delegations related to trade waste following the receipt of the delegations review. Is that clear?
No, following a receipt of
the report,
the delegations report to the 31 July council meeting. Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted a question on the separation of the bylaw and the manual. Have you started that piece of work, or do you have a time frame during which that piece of work will be completed?
Through you, Madam Mayor, through the review, we've identified a number of areas that do need to be separated out. So that process has started, but it is triggering a full bylaw review process, including the special consultative procedure. So it's unlikely that we'd be able to go out for consultation until next year, just with the timings of the rest of the year.
Okay, so those changes could be another 12 months away.
possibly.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. So I'll ask for a mover and seconder, noting that Part D has now been changed around the receipt of a report on delegations in the 31 July council meeting. Moving from Councillor Gregg, seconder, Councillor Crystal. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, briefly, just thank you for all the work on this, and it's really good to see a simplification of the trade waste bylaw, especially how the manual interacts with the bylaw to make it easier for everybody to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
I just thank you for all the work, and this will obviously lead to a much bigger piece of work in reviewing the bylaw, so go forth, conquer.
Go forth. Any further speakers? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russell. Agenda item 8, appointments to the Reimagining Flood Resilience Steering Group. Do we? Hi, Michelle. And Simon, welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Here really with a procedural paper where we're seeking your approval to appoint 2 elected members, Councillors Taylor and Brown, to the Reimagining Flood Resilience Heretaunga Plains Steering Group, which is being established by Hawke's Bay Regional Council. This project they've initiated in response to the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review. And you'll probably recall a workshop that was held with you on the matter in March, earlier this year. So the aim of the project is to consider the future of 2 flood control schemes within Hawke's Bay, and this will include looking at balancing management of risks from flooding with affordability and how engineering solutions can work alongside nature-based solutions to improve flood resilience. The Heretaunga Plains scheme comprises the Tutaikuri and Ngāriroro rivers, so it's of interest to Napier. The steering group comprises elected members from Napier Council, Hastings District Council, Regional Council, and representatives from Mana Ahuriri Trust and Tamatea Pōkai Whenua. And just to note that the terms of reference for the steering group will be discussed and agreed once the group convenes, which the Regional Council are hoping will happen in the next 1 to 2 months. I'll just hand over to Simon.
Tēnā koutou. A couple other items there just to let you know that there is a technical advisory group supporting the steering group, and they have started meeting. We've had 2 meetings so far, and we've got another one coming up. Michelle and I are members on that from Napier, and all those members on the steering group also have representation at that technical advisory group as well. And at that, we had discussed the intent of the members on the steering group will be to bring back regular updates to the partner councils to keep them informed about how this project is proceeding. So, yeah, that's us.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So the technical advisory group officers, noting that you've met a couple of times already and that I see great value in this, I want to understand what the resource aspect is from council's end, so how much time has been put in by officers, and are there any concerns about BAU as a result?
Yeah, we are meeting monthly at the moment. The intent of the technical advisory group is to advise the work, I guess, from an overview perspective, but not to do the work. We will be using external experts to do most of the mahi there, and we've also got an external project manager from HBRC that's supporting this project. It does mean, we've got to balance a whole lot of things. We all do, and so we are just managing that. It's certainly not impacting on my BAU at this stage, though, I can say that.
Move. Ready to move? No further questions? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I have no issue in endorsing and supporting this. Like I said, I see great value in it. It's fabulous for us to be acting on recommendations that have come out of independent reports and to be working with our partners across the region. And I think today is an example. We've heard both the elected members that are put forward for this, Councillor Brown and Councillor Taylor, speak with conviction around climate resilience, etc. So it feels like a really good fit. So good luck, guys.
I'll just ask the seconder if they'd like to speak. No? And Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the confidence shown in Councillor Brown and myself. I look forward to some site visits up both of the rivers. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to actually have a look at these, so a good opportunity to get to the headwaters of both the Tutaikuri and the Ngauruoro. So thank you very much for the confidence.
Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against and carried. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Michelle. And now Paulina for the Remuneration Guidance Hearing Committee paper, please.
Welcome. Hello again. This paper seeks to provide some guidance in terms of remuneration for the elected members participated in hearings for the proposed district plan. I'm going to take the paper as read, but I just want to mention that the chair and deputy chair of the hearing committee has been able to review this paper. So I'm proposing to receive the guidance and make some changes to the elected members allowance and expense policy to reflect the guidance.
Thanks, Paulina. Open up for any questions. Pretty straightforward. Could I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Seconded by Councillor Brown. Any comments?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you. Councillor Brown and I worked with staff on this. There was just some additional guidance that needed to come in, particularly as we're working through the district plan hearing process and a couple of other sort of changes to wrap in. So I appreciate the work that's been done on that and happy to support.
Yeah, Councillor Brown.
Nothing further.
Any further speakers? Councillor McGrath.
Yep, just through the chair. I've always had, I guess, an issue with councillor remuneration outside of our general role. And one of the concerns I have is, is that a councillor could potentially turn up to the bare minimum of what a councillor can do, which I think is a meeting once every 6 weeks or something, and possibly online, and then get put onto a hearing panel and I think make $93 an hour extra by attending the hearing and up to 16 hours, pre-work for it at $93 an hour. I'm not going to vote against it, but it just sticks in my mind that you could perhaps do a bare minimum for the community and then turn up when there's the extra money to be made. Admittedly, there is a workload there, but it may not actually exceed what other councillors have done within their roles over a 12-month period.
I think I'll jump in before the... I can assure you that the workload does far exceed, particularly when you're in the middle of district plan hearings, as the number of them are at the moment. And your comments about people doing minimal workload could apply to any councillor around this table for just the normal part of our role. And it comes down to a person's personal integrity and commitment to serving their community. And I would hope that we don't have anybody sitting around this table that doesn't respect and uphold that. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to make another comment in relation to that to sit on a hearings committee, you are required to undertake some training, and that includes quite a lot of study in relation to the Making Good Decisions course, for which you are not paid, for which you do in your own time. So that qualification allows you to sit on a hearing committee, and that's at your cost, other than the travel. and that's one of the prerequisites before you can or are qualified to sit on the hearings committee. So I don't think, those that sit there have not done the work previous to allow them to be sitting as a commissioner on any hearing.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any further speakers?
Right, a reply.
Right of reply? How did I know that was coming?
Thank you, Mayor Wise. I think Councillor Taylor summed it up nicely. I would make the point that once you are an accredited RMA commissioner, you're an independent commissioner. You do not sit as a city councillor in those roles. You sit as a commissioner, and that the rates the Remuneration Authority have set for that role, which is reflected in our policy, are around a third of the price of what you pay external independent commissioners for the exact same role. So there is certainly a community service component that you undertake when you do that. And finally, I would like to finish with an invitation for Councillor McGrath to join the Hearings Committee in a future term to undertake the RMA accredited Making Good Decisions certification, which requires a pre-assessment, a 2 to 3 day course, and a post-assessment in which you would achieve a qualification, and then an appointment onto a hearings committee and join that. And I believe if you were to do that, you would fully appreciate the workload that is involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Excellent. Thanks, Paulina. Now we have Steph, Hawke's Bay Matariki Housing Leadership Group Memorandum of Understanding.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll take the paper as read, but this really just is a seeking approval to enter into the Memorandum of Understanding, which excuse me, which is looking at the continuation of locally led housing delivery via the Housing Leadership Group. The approach is consistent with our housing strategy, which was adopted and approved in October last year, which you'll recall. The MOU is non-binding and has no financial implications, and it really is the first step in the membership organisations coming together. I would just note that there was a question circulated, which I'll provide a response to, which was raised by Councillor Bogue, just in relation to the ability for other parties to join the Memorandum of Understanding, and that is underway at the moment in relation to Te Tai Whenua o Te Whanganui Aotearoa to join. So there is a discussion in that process. Sorry, a discussion regarding that. Just to also note that both Hastings District Council and Central Hawke's Bay have also approved joining the Memorandum of Understanding. And happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Steph. Any questions? I think it's Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Steve, I was wondering, so I'm assuming there will be a plan that sits as part of this piece of work. Will that plan be made available, the approach that's referred to in the memorandum, will that be made available to the public to understand this collective approach that we're looking to deliver collectively?
Yes, it will be, and I guess the first step has been, as I've outlined in the paper, is the 150 homes, places that the parties, various different parties, not us because we're not party to that, and I think the memorandum also outlines that you can undertake your own individual requirements as well. So, for example, for us, some of the other parties are involved in the first tranche of supplying 150 homes, but the overall plan is coming together, yes.
Thank you. And so that overall plan, noting that there will be different individual groups, the reason that I'm asking is that I know that there are a number of stakeholders in our community that work in this space and who would love to understand what the direction is, the approach, the strategy, so that they can see how they might be able to contribute to delivering on some of those aspirations and objectives as well. So will there be a centralised point for those stakeholders to go to in order to view the plan?
Through the chair, yes, there will be. And at the wānanga that was held last Thursday, it was a action taken away by the Regional Recovery Agency to start working on the overall strategic plan for housing, and for that to be the first focus for them going forward. And that is looking as if it'll be prepared by the end of the year and then be able to be reported back. So one of the requirements that Hastings District Council pointed out was that they were very interested in having regular reporting coming back to the individual organisations, and that is proposed as an amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you, that was going to be my other question, so sorted.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a question around the proposal to put 150 social houses within the region. Is there an indication as to where those houses might be, or is that still being developed?
Through the chair, so yes, the 150 places were required to be lodged with Ministry of Housing and Urban Development by the end of this month, as in actually today/tomorrow. And so some of the organisations, there is a broad scope across both Napier Hastings, but also Central Hawke's Bay as well, and also Wairoa. And there is the ability for another tranche to come further into 2028.
Any further questions? Right. Could I ask for a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Bogue, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Gregg. Invite you to speak.
Just to say, this is a great move, very much in keeping with our housing strategy and common sense, really. There's a lot of players in this area now, new ones, and it's really good for us all to be working together. And I think we'll get some brownie points too from central government if we're working together rather than in isolation in our respective silos. So, yep, it's a really good, positive move forward for housing, which is such an important issue in our whole region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, echoing Councillor Bogue on that point, this will provide a great opportunity to seek government support. So it's a great thing for our whole region. Thank you.
Okay. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks very much, Steve.
Thank you.
And now we have the quarterly performance report.
Time's low.
Caroline and Talia.
Yeah, I can smell it.
Welcome.
Kia ora. So we are presenting the quarterly performance report with its appendix, the quarterly report. And this is, I think, the third report that we are presenting in this format, so still open to feedback if there is anything else that you would like to be seeing. In terms of the financials, year-to-date net operating shortfall of 10.1 million is 4.4 million favourable to the amended budget deficit of 14.5 million. Other than that, I'll take the paper as read. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Talia. Opening up for any questions. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a few, if you could just bear with me. Thank you, ladies. First of all, I wanted to understand what the emerging picture is for us. We're undertaking some key projects at the moment around civic and community infrastructure. We know that we're incurring debt because of these things. Most of us would argue that that's good debt, that they're being invested in the right places. But what does it mean as we look forward to rates and debt headroom in the future?
Through the Mayor. So when we set our 3-year plan, we actually set a forecast 10-year view of our rates increases over the next 10 years. So as you know, we had set 11.7% for 25-26, and we've landed on 8.9. We're forecasting for the following year to be at a 9.1, and then we drop down to around 8.4% for each of the years after. Obviously, as we go through each annual plan iteration, we review those rates increases and make savings where we can. We are exhausting, however, all our cost-saving avenues within our operating budgets. So to find future savings, to bring these rate forecasts down any further without impacting our balanced budget, we'd need to start looking at things like our levels of service, which does require consultation and that can occur through the long-term plan. With regard to our debt and our debt headroom, we have currently sufficient debt headroom to allow for debt capacity in the event of another disaster or emergency or any unforeseen expenditure. Our debt cap is set at 175% of annual revenue, and we're currently sitting at 71% for 25-26. And that debt cap is for a council that does not have a credit rating. If we were to obtain a credit rating, our debt limit would go up to 280% of annual revenue. So therefore, that would create even more or greater debt headroom.
Thank you. I'll keep going. So in the attachment, I noticed that the Napier Assist interaction numbers, comparing quarter 1 to quarter 3, there was quite a sharp downturn in those, and I wondered if that had been analysed and what was that due to?
Through the Mayor, yes, I believe it has been analysed, and it was due to the team reducing from 10 staff in the first quarter down to 5 in the third quarter. So that resulted in a reduction in interactions by about 40%. But since then, they've recently employed 2 new staff into the City Assist team, so they've started to observe an increase in the retailer interactions as a result.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just noting that, there've been a number of incidents in our CBD recently, so I think that's positive to hear. And just one further, and this might be a question for Russell in his orange jumper. There were a number of comments in the report around, I suppose, the impact of our organisational redesign on project delivery. And I just want to understand which capital projects are most effective and what mitigation is in place to avoid any risk or manage risk or any further deferrals.
Yes, thank you. Is this going? Oh, excellent. That's something that we're very mindful of as a risk with any of our projects, with changes that come along. And we don't necessarily have a list of ones that we would see not being delivered. It's probably more of a timing issue as we look to making those changes and staff move into some of those new roles. But it's definitely one where we've got the support of our subcontractors, but we're very mindful and we're watching to make sure that those projects that are important to be stay on time and on track are being managed and are a priority. And we're sort of where those other ones what we can look to delay, given some of the resourcing constraints, we can do that, but that's where we're looking at that at the moment. So it's very much a priority of the management team to just be mindful and watching that. So,
Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. This may be a question for Thunis, but just looking at page 106 about Ocean Spa and that it's $787,000 less revenue than budgeted. Do we know why there is such a large shortfall?
Not enough people going.
Just repeat that. I couldn't pick up what you were saying.
Oh, sorry. So $787,000 less revenue than budgeted at Ocean Spa. Just wondering if we know why there is such a large shortfall.
I am aware that our budget has been set quite high, and that's part of our problem. And also that the downturn for the local economy, it's part of that challenge. We are very aware of that, and with our marketing, that we are trying to pick those numbers up and get more income.
Councillor Brown.
Not so much a question, but more of a statement in line with what Talia mentioned about what we're looking for. Reading through it, I noticed a number of our levels of service wording and the performance measures are, how do I put it, could do with some improvement to help us further align our goals and us to understand how the organisation is performing against what we're setting for it. So without going into a list of examples, just maybe suggesting that that's a piece of governance work that happens probably now in the new term around reviewing what the levels of service wording is that we're asking to be set and then the measures. And I can give an example if that would help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, building asset management, the level of service that we've said is that the buildings need to be safe, but we don't have any measure around the maintenance or standard of upkeep that we have, which then, because we don't have the visibility of how we're maintaining our buildings, that could potentially fall wayside. Our cemeteries, the requirement, there's no measure or capacity of growth planning. In terms of the level of service for Kennedy Park, that it's a sustainable business. Our measure is the average length of stay, and I thought that was quite a strange one, and I thought something about turnover or making a profit or a loss would be. So I suppose it's another one that I've been banging on about for a while, stormwater network. Our measures are things like there are no floods, which seem quite largely out of our control, although I see that one's a mandatory one. But we have a stormwater network improvement plan, and it would be neat to see some measures in there around how we're tracking with the improvement plan. So I'm aware that's quite a big piece of work, but suggesting that take place at a governance level at some stage.
Okay. Councillor Crown.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy actually to respond to that one. And I think that those are all really valid points that you've made, Councillor Brown. Working with corporate services in my capacity as the chair of the Prosperous Committee, this is something that Caroline and I have spent a lot of time talking about. You quite rightly noted that some of the levels of service are mandatory or statutory in nature, and some of those things we set. And so I guess the direction of our conversation so far is that that has to become part of the long-term planning process, for governors, for elected members to be a part of when setting. And I'll be really honest with you, I think the first time we did an LTP, I didn't realise that was where it should be set. And so, yeah, these are certainly improvements that we're looking to actually lock into those processes as we move forward, for whoever's sitting around the table at the time.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you, that's really useful, Councillor Crown. Any further questions? Right, can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Crown. Councillor Brown, would you like to speak to that?
Just briefly, feels like I'm talking all the time. Thanks, team. I know that it takes a lot of work to pull it together, but I think we're starting to really see a clear picture for us at this table with the new formatting, and it's allowing us to pick up on the types of improvements that Councillor Brown has noted as well. Yeah, can't wait to see what it looks like for year end.
Councillor Brown.
Nothing further to add.
Any further speakers? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against and carried. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Talia. Regional Economic Development Agency interim update, and we have Bill here.
Oh my goodness.
Tēnā koutou, kua huhui mai nei ki te korero I ngā kaupapa o te rā. Katie here kai koutou. Ai. Nō rara, ka tare ahau. So you're hungry, and so I will be brief. Yes, so this is a sensible piece of work, just sort of crossing T's and dotting I's to make sure that the work of the Regional Economic Development Agency continues with following the reports at the Future Napier Committee and the change of guards in terms of the board and the CE. There's an interim letter of expectation to make sure that the work that needs to carry on is carried on, and that everyone is focused on getting on with the future job. So the two attachments are the interim letter of expectation for endorsement and the funding agreement for information, which just follows on from the long-term plan commitments. So happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Thanks for considering our hungriness there, Wiremu. My question is this letter of expectation required now? Because of the fact that the interim board has been appointed, and from what I read, the idea was that so there's going to be 2 letters. So I guess the question is, when is the next letter? When do you expect the next letter to be available and prepared?
Well, great question. So I've got sort of 2 responses, really. The first is I just spoke to John Lachlan. So as you said, the interim board has been appointed a couple of weeks ago. So that's John Lachlan, Mecca Faitali and Andrew Gibbs. And he is keen to get on with the preparing of the letter of expectation. And then secondly, I think there's a real opportunity here, as per direction from the committee, to support Matariki and the Secretariat and our members in terms of the communication around that, and that was identified in Gus's report originally, that the comms around Matariki could use some more support. So my recommendation is that there's an opportunity for council officers to help in that process.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. My question, I think, refers back to a challenge that was issued to us by the Reader Board when they spoke to us, which was, if you want us to achieve something, make it clear in the letter of expectations. This interim letter of expectations probably doesn't make it clear what Napier wants out of Reader. Is it appropriate for us to do this now, considering it being interim, or do you see a better place for that conversation to take place?
I think that this is perfunctory. This is just the bare minimum necessary to move to the next step. And then, yes, we should probably have a proper workshop to actually nail down what is the expectation for Napier and the Napier ratepayer. Totally agree.
Yeah, further to that, this is absolutely just a letter of expectation for a short period of time, and really what it does is outline the work program that was already in play and making it clear to the interim board that the expectation is and that they're being given the authority to continue with those pieces of work. There will be, while they're doing this, workshops with all the councils and with Matariki to actually really hone in on what those regional priorities are going forward to feed into the letter of expectation when we transition to the new permanent board, because this is just an interim board. Yeah. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's a really good clarification, because in my mind at the moment the letter of expectation actually conflicts itself. So there is a mention in there of Reader working with RRA to determine the regional priorities, and then there is the reference of working with shareholder group, the shareholder group as well. So I think given that it is perfunctory and it's just for a short time, that's okay, but I think that those are the kinds of things that we need to be very clear about moving forward, and what is the expectation for setting those regional priorities, how will they be achieved, and in what forum, how are we actually going to work through determining what they are.
Yeah. Any further questions? No? Can I ask for a mover and a seconder? I'm happy to move from the chair. Thank you, Councillor Crown. And I guess, just to repeat what I said, this is very much sort of a holding guidance for a very short interim period of time while we do work through identifying the more long-term pathway forward in terms of regional priorities and the role that READA will play within that, and also Matariki and how that interlinks with all of us as the individual councils as well. So there will be several pieces of work that are happening alongside READA carrying on with the work program that is identified as part of the letter of expectations. So, yeah. Councillor Crown, nothing further. Any other speakers? So I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Something weird about that. Item 13, official information requests. We have Anna, so this is a new report which will be coming through on our agenda every council meeting.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take the report as read and happy to take any questions about the report.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
Just a question about Lagoimas.
Yes.
Do people requesting them have to provide any identification that they're a real person?
No, they do not.
Why not?
Because it's not required under legislation.
Councillor Bogue.
Yes, many of the Lagoimas are the people asking for them charged. Is that still the rules?
So it's different councils have different approaches to charging. The Ombudsman has an online guide which we adhere to. So the bar for charging is quite high. If we receive a request in that is we think charging is appropriate, we need to go back to the requester first off and ask if they can refine their request to bring it to a level that's manageable for staff, and so not require charging. It's since I've been at Napier City Council, I think I've only known of one time we've charged. It's a setting that could be reviewed, but there's only certain parts of the response process that you're allowed to charge for as well. So, it's not a very straightforward thing to do. And the Ombudsman basically would say, in the interests of transparency, you're placing a barrier in place to that if you put charging in as a standard process.
Councillor Taylor, then Councillor
Probably,
Green.
through you, Your Worship, probably very simple, but in the table, the ones that don't have any dates on the end, are they still under?
They were at the time of printing of the report, yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a question out of interest. Are we seeing an increase or decrease or stable amount of information requests coming to council?
It really ebbs and flows. We do expect an uptake in the lead up to the elections. Yeah.
Any further questions? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Councillor Gregg. Any comments?
No.
No. I think, thank you, Anna, for bringing this report. As I said, it will be a new standing agenda item, and I think it's really useful for our community to actually have an awareness of the Lagoimas that are coming through, the volume of them, perhaps, the resourcing that's required to respond to them, and not to say that that's not important, because obviously transparency with our community is very, very important, but it does come at a cost, and the ratepayers are paying for that. So that question from Councillor Bogue around charging, I think is a very valid one. I know some Lagoimas can be, hours and hours and hours of staff time. So, but it's good to have this visibility. So thank you.
Welcome.
And next up we have information Did I put the motion there? No, I didn't. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Next up are the minutes of our joint committees, which we have the Hawke's Bay Regional Transport Committee and the Ahuriri Regional Park Joint Committee to receive. Was that moving, Councillor Price? Seconding, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. I will just see if there's any questions, any of the representatives on those committees, or people are happy to take the minutes as read. Okay, excellent. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against and carried. And the action points register, Anna. Don't know if there's anything you wanted to comment on there.
No, this is just the standard report that we bring to council, but happy to take questions if I'm able to help.
Great. Any questions? So, great to see there's a lot of them that have been completed, so they will come off next month's report, of course. There's no questions. I'm happy to move. If I could have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Price. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I think people are definitely getting hungry. Local Government New Zealand rates capping.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take this report as read. Obviously, it's content that's come from Local Government New Zealand. So if there were any questions, we would need to go back to them to ask those.
Yes, that's right. So I guess if there are any questions, I would ask that you send those through to Anna, and then we will compile those and then send them off to Local Government NZ. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Anna, just a question. So you're asking us to either support or not support in Resolution Part B. I found it a little confusing. What is actually the proposed direction of travel?
I don't know if I can help. So through the chair. So obviously, as Anna has said, we've received this. This is in advance of the AGM coming up. We don't have any other context, but the direction that we were asked from LGNZ is, in our process, is just to seek guidance from the council, if you're happy to give that, for those attending the AGM in how they should vote.
Yes, I understand that. But in Resolution B, sorry, you're asking us to either support or not support LGNZ's proposed directions?
Oh, through the Mayor, they've outlined their position or how they intend to move forward in the attachment. Have you?
Yeah, I've just read that. Which section does it clearly lay out what we're saying we support?
So through the chair, I think it's in the final section where it says if we support and the AGM supports, the direction of travel will be continuing the current approach, developing a plan for the next phase. The next phase will go to the special general meeting, and that will then hopefully have that explicit mandate. So it's really, one, acknowledging the direction they've taken to date, that we're comfortable with that direction continuing, and that those additional processes will take place.
And I guess what I'm hearing from you, Deputy Mayor, is that you don't feel that it's particularly explicit in the document from LGNZ what exactly it is that their direction of travel is that they're asking for us to support.
Well, yeah, exactly. It talks about, you know, LGNZ setting the tone, and being louder would be more essential and things like that. I mean, I assume that they're not in support of rates capping, but nowhere does it sort of be explicit.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I read this, the position that I thought was expressed was falls under the how would or could we stop rates capping? And they've referenced the example from South Australia, and to me that's the direction of travel that they're proposing and putting in front of members that they'll be putting in front of members at the AGM.
Through the Mayor, that's how I interpreted things in this section. Our advocacy needs to step up a gear. They're talking about if LGNZ is not advocating for not rates capping, then the government's likely to bring it in.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe it's purposefully grey.
Right, okay. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Gosh, everyone's hesitant to put their hands up. Councillor Mawson and Councillor Bogue, thank you. Any comments?
Yeah, we need a voice to support. I mean, it's a little bit difficult to talk about capping rates when every council's got different scenario and priorities. So, yeah, I don't quite know how that will work. So, any voice that can stand up for, yeah, I mean, it's obviously we've got a lot more information than some of the community have some at times. So, yeah, I'm fully support this.
And sorry, just to clarify, that resolution was to support, wasn't it?
Yes.
We'll cross out the not support, thank you. Councillor Bogue?
I think it's good to send our delegates with and it would be great if when you come back, if you could give us, a really good report on how the debate and the discussion went on this, and actually on the other items as well, as I'm sure you will. So yes, no, I support this.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No? Councillor Simpson?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I'm going to speak against. I understand the position LGNZ are taking, but I didn't think it was a particularly good report. I think there was a bit of balance misalignment there, so I'll be voting against.
Any further speakers? Councillor Crown?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything, but I will now. I've done a little bit of research on the situation in South Australia. It involves levels of the government working in with local government in order to understand each other's perspectives and to set, I suppose, it's kind of that compromise of no one's really happy, but this is what we're going to aim for type scenario. And I think as an approach, it took a long time to actually land. So I guess what they're proposing here is that it's a relationship building thing, and it's a relationship building opportunity with central government to potentially reframe their relationship with local government, which I think is a message that we've heard already today around how our sector is viewed by central government. Whilst it may not be called rates capping, there is certainly some standards and some levels that are set which will feel like capping to an organisation like ours, and look to satisfy what we're hearing from our community, which is that, especially at the moment with the cost of living, they are really feeling things and they want some action in this area. So I'm happy to support this because it shows that LGNZ are taking it seriously, that they've done a lot of research into the different ways that this type of scenario is handled in other countries. They've found what they think is the best working model for us here in New Zealand with the nuances that we have. And so I'm really happy to see what the next steps look like. But the South Australian model, in my mind, seems like a good fit and definitely something to consider and to spend a bit more time, I guess, investing in order to satisfy central government, local government, and of course the communities that we serve.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
I guess from earlier today, I haven't supported our rates rises, and it sort of might put me on the negative on this side of things. But I will support this going forward today, because it may be one of the only ways where we have actually both sides of the conversation around the same table. And if it goes through us to local government New Zealand and to the government, then this may be the only way that it is actually heard. So I will support that today.
Okay. Any further speakers? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just speaking in support as well, and similar to what the last two speakers have said, I really support a mature conversation around how rates fit into our entire taxation system. I think there's been, sort of taking a step back, there's been that review into our tax system in New Zealand, and they recommended things like capital gains tax and wealth taxes or property taxes. And realistically, rates are a property tax. So if we looked at our taxation system as a whole, we could hopefully find a more sustainable way for rates to fit into that bigger picture. Of course, if it's fitting into the bigger picture, it also would imply that there was taxes coming this way as well. So optimistically, this could be the start of a good, mature conversation around how rates and taxes can work together to fund the infrastructure and the society that New Zealand needs.
Thank you. We've had 3 speak in support. Is there any other speakers against? No, so I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Councillor Simpson. Right, moving on to reports from the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you very much, Anna. So noting the Audit and Risk Committee recommendations, we have first up the deep dive of the Sustainable Financial Strategy. I'm going to read these out. If you would like any taken separately, please let me know. Otherwise, we will move them all as one. 2 was the deep dive of the effectiveness of emergency management. 3, asset management roadmap progress. 4 was the risk and assurance report. 5, review of the Audit and Risk Committee Charter. Now, I am actually just going to make a suggestion here from the recommendation that came from the committee. The committee recommendation was that the changes be made immediately, that is in terms of the charter and the name. However, the roll-on effect of that is actually needing to amend a number of other council policies, documents, etc., that would then have to come back to council for adoption. So I would like to recommend that we actually, these become effective in the new triennium as part of the setup in the new triennium. And 6 was NCC guidance for insurance requirements. 7, progress report on procurement and contract management improvements. 8 was the health and safety update report. 9, external audit action status update. And 10, the sensitive expenditure for the Mayor and Chief Executive.
Sorry, I don't really want to ask that question that they asked the committee about the training.
Oh, and we did have one action to ask elected members whether they consider training on health and safety risks should be deferred until after October 2025 elections or undertaken prior to October 2025. And the context of that was the training of elected members was essentially one of the primary reasons that we were out of our risk appetite for that particular risk. So, and I don't know that we need to answer that today, but if we make that an action from this meeting, and then we will follow up on that, but just so that you're aware and have a ponder about that. Okay, so I'm happy to move from the chair. If I could have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Mawson. And again, I will, as I always do, encourage you to come along to an Audit and Risk meeting, or what it will be soon called the Risk and Assurance Committee, come the new triennium. There is a lot of really valuable information, and sometimes reading the reports doesn't give you all the context, so yeah. So I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against and carried. Rightio, tenders let. Where am I? This one. 240. So we have 3 contracts that are here for consideration. Were there any questions? Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, thank you. On those, so the Erickson Road carriageway upgrade, Thames Street and Te Awa Ave stormwater swale construction, and the Mataroaho Reservoir detailed design. So some great progress being made there on some really significant projects that we've got in the pipeline. If there's no questions, could I have a mover? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any comments?
No comments.
No. So I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So that brings us to the conclusion of our open agenda, except for the minor matter. So I will pass across to Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have raised a minor matter to speak to the integrity of public statements being made by elected members, particularly those members announcing candidacy. Clearly, as we enter election year, disagreement is expected and healthy, and debate is necessary, but inaccurate misrepresentations from elected members who hold a privileged position in the community is a breach of our code of conduct, and that is for good reason. We have all signed the elected members' code of conduct, and clause 7 of that code reads, members must ensure that their communications with the public, including social media, are accurate, fair, and not misleading. Members also must comply with the provisions of the code under the Local Government Act. You have a responsibility. As you know, having a leadership position, I take my responsibility under Section 5 of the code to uphold that code of conduct and to hold other members accountable for their behaviour seriously. So respectfully, I will not be shy about calling out behaviour that does not meet the bar you have subscribed to. Public trust depends on us being honest, not just popular. This is a general reminder, and by way of example, I have fact-checked a number of public statements that have been made since our last meeting, and with your leave, Mayor Wise, I would like to run through them quickly. Claim number 1, the Ahuriri Regional Park is an unbudgeted 20 million plus spend. Inaccurate. Council's 3-year plan budgets 13.2 million for the park in years 28 to 31, with funding shared from Hawke's Bay Regional Council and further work for consent-related stormwater diversion from 24 to 29. The park is fully funded, budgeted and publicly scrutinised. Claim number 2, budgets and staff numbers have swung wildly. This is inaccurate. I have reviewed the staff numbers over the last 6 years. The variation, including vacancy loading, is between 6 and 12% annually, which is in line with best practice for an organisation of our size. I've also reviewed the total CapEx and OpEx numbers for the last 6 years. The variation is between 6 and 13% growth annually, directly aligned with increased services like cyclone recovery and Three Waters investment. The third claim, we are pumping stormwater ineffectively. Flows from areas like Jervoistown and Miani should be redirected to the cross-country drain. This is misleading. The cross-country drain is already linked to the stormwater from these areas and is utilised effectively in higher flow events. Claim number 4, the Mayor refused to accept the Hobson's Pledge pro forma emails as submissions into the Māori wards debate earlier in the year. This is inaccurate. The Local Government Act 2022, Section 82, Principles of Consultation, and Section 83, Special Consultative Procedure, made those emails ineligible to be treated as official submissions. And claim number 5, that we have neglected essential infrastructure, favouring nice-to-have projects such as delaying the Hill Reservoir. Inaccurate. Napier has spent 110 million on Capital Three Waters in the last 3 years. The Hill Reservoir project is funded, on track to its long-term plan timeline, as are the other core projects in this space, such as the outfall replacement, the wastewater treatment plant renovations, the bore drillings, the tidal gates, and all the other network improvements. So in summary, don't state things as fact when they are not. Integrity matters. You all think so because you all signed the Code of Conduct. Finally, we should fully support vibrant campaigning and robust debate. However, inaccurate and misleading campaign claims erode public trust in council, the very organisation and people you want to lead. Just look at your neighbours. It is possible to run an honest campaign without burning down the house you want to live in and the people you want to live in it with. That's our staff. Our democracy deserves integrity, respect and honesty, even in disagreement. Through you, Mayor Wise, I look forward to not needing to bring this to anyone's attention again. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will just open up if there is any general discussion on the matter. No, that brings us to the conclusion of our open agenda. If I could have a mover and a seconder to go into public excluded. Thank you, Councillor Tariha, Councillor Crystal. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against and carried. And I think we will...